Hello, hello. We're here once again to talk about the Wheel of Time. And we're going to talk about Winter's Heart, which is book 9 in the series. We're going to talk about basically the second third of the book, which is chapters 11 through 22. And it's going to be me today I'm going to be the Sojin centrist. And then we have Tristram slash Mass with us here today. And later on, possibly Andrew Mindgasms will be joining us a little bit later. Um, Winter's Heart. It is, I'm really enjoying it,
I love this book.
rereading this book. But at chapter 11, it, it opens up with Randall Thor, and he's trying to evade the scent of, the Ashraman are trying to find him, and
Hmm.
he's trying to evade their search. He's basically at this point he only trusts three Ashraman, which he does make mention of that in the chapter. So we're talking about uh,
Narishma,
Narishma,
um,
Flynn,
and
and Hopwell. Those are the only three that he trusts at the moment. And I think, if not this chapter, no, I think in the last chapter of this, they make it explicit that um, the Mahale is not a good person.
yeah,
We kind of get the
absolutely.
confirmation there. But
But we already kind of were pretty sure.
yeah, you had the clues from Luce there and just like losing his mind whenever um, he was in the room, Mazrim time.
I never took Luz Theron as as gospel truth, but the but
Well, sometimes, he was right sometimes.
he is, but he's also even a watch that's broken is right twice a day. It's just like yeah, I would never rely on
Uh-oh.
the psychopath that is Lewis Theron. But yeah,
Uh-oh. Hold on a second.
have you lost signal? Hmm. But for those of you listening, I would say that for me, it's more about the fact that Rand didn't trust him from day one. Bashir doesn't like him. What he's done in Saldia, I think his actions already led it to be fairly clear that he was probably bad news. Didn't like Rand being leader. Didn't like Rand introducing ranks. Yeah, dangerous bloke.
All right. Sorry about that. I had just had received some call here.
No problem.
All right. So Rand is making his return back to
Mm-hmm.
Camelin, but he's doing it in such a way that he's not going to be recognizable.
Yep.
So he uses the mask of mirrors to make himself relatively ugly.
Oh, he's horrifically ugly, isn't he? Like I think Min sees him and she,
Yeah,
you look
he's
terrible.
pretty bad looking. I think they say that he has like some wart on his nose,
Yeah,
and
it's like a joke, kind of, with Min at least. She thinks it's hilarious.
yeah, because Min, I think she's the first person to be privy to what's going on because she had
Mm.
been with them at the time. So she knows what's going on and she's assisting him uh, in getting, because right now his task in coming to Camelin
Mhm.
was to meet Nynaeve about his secret mission that he wants to go on, which he hasn't really spelled out too much at this point. So the problem with returning to Camelin is that there's two other love interests there at the moment that
Absolutely.
he's kind of conflicted at this point because he knows he's being tracked and he doesn't want to have um, involve Avi and then Elaine and have them possibly caught in the crossfire between him and the Rogue Ashaman. But
Mm.
actually, Min, I believe, encourages him to go see at least Elaine, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm.
Uh, so there is that encouragement. But his main mission for now is to go visit Nynaeve. I know they run into Miss Harfor, who's kind of like well, she kind of run like the daily affairs,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess.
of the castle. She and she's like one half of Elaine's two allies, right? There's
All right, so we
the
have Harfor and then the other, what was her name?
yeah.
She was kind of like the one that was vying for, well, trying to take off the heat by vying for the throne, but she was
Well,
doing it in such a way
oh,
that
no, Dylan. Well, I would say Dylan's a little different. Um,
are you talking about
Dylan,
somebody else?
well, yeah, because Dylan is like actually like a nobility.
Right.
She can.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
I
talking
know
about
who you're talking
Nori.
about. Yeah,
Yeah,
the guy who's kind of like,
yeah,
um, he kind of runs more of like the financial side of
correct.
things.
He's the clerk and she's the maid, but clerk and maid make them sound unimportant, but actually they're super important. And one of the things that's really cool here is this is actually reflective of old sort of British nobility,
Hmm.
and how they would have a household staff, and they would be sort of like the housekeeper, which sounds like a rather doldrum job, but in reality, she's pretty much in charge of all the servants and the running of the house. Even though the mistress of the house is her boss, she wouldn't
Hmm.
actually have much to do with it. And that's what Rennie Harford does. She arranges everything. All the servants march to her drum, but Nori is like her like numbers guy,
Our
her money
accountant.
guy, but he also ends up being him and Rene both him and Harper both end up having to do with like the intelligence system that she
Yeah,
created.
like
I think
counter
like
spying and stuff.
yeah, and so it's really interesting that these sort of that Jordan took these servant roles that were always notorious in my own culture for being far more important than they appeared, and in some
Uh,
cases the servants almost ruling the roost from the position of servant and bullying their own masters, and that's quite an in joke in sort of period British culture. And so the thing is, you see here that these two people technically obey Elaine, and they do love her and they're very loyal to her. But they also a little bit bully her and kind of keep her in line, especially when she gets pregnant. And I just think they're fantastic, and I just love that whole little niche thing. They're not the most important characters, but you can see that they're living these full, rich lives. And I really like how Jordan, with only a few lines, really gives us a feeling that these people have deeper characters that we just don't see on screen. And I think that's really very good. It really sets the tone for the castle.
Right. So, upon meeting Harfor is extremely distrustful of this Newly, who looks like a bad character that
Mm-hmm.
just ran in disguise. And while he's being because originally she was just going to take whatever message he had to send with Nynaeve, but I think Min chips in and it's like, yeah, he needs to speak to Nynaeve. But she does escort them, and during the escort, uh, Rand notices like a ton of channeling going on by women, and he inquires about that. And his answer was like, "Oh yeah, there's five Aes Sedai." Well, he was like, "Oh, how many Aes Sedai are there?" And she was like five, and she was pretty much correct. But there's a lot more channelers than Aes Sedai that are actually present. I know there's a bunch of wind finders getting instruction, and I guess the kin, because the kin aren't technically Aes Sedai, but they can channel. So
The
he's like, what's going on here?
yeah,
And he conflated it because he heard that there were some rumors that a bunch of Aes Sedai were descending on Camelin. So he thought at this point that they're probably already there. And when there's a bunch of Aes Sedai, that makes them really, really twitchy.
yeah, because remember, he still remembers being in the box, right? You know,
Right, right. The trauma that caused, for
absolutely.
sure.
And that wasn't done to him by Asherman. That was done by Aes Sedai.
Hmm.
Obviously, the Asherman tried to kill him recently, which is why he no longer trusts Asherman either. Because for a brief period of time after Lord of Chaos, the Asherman are in, but now he's realizing more and more of them are going insane. And obviously, with the Mahale being the Mahale, and then the attempted assassination, now he just basically is almost trusting no one, and we're beginning to see his levels of hardness go
Hmm.
up a notch. To we're reaching crisis point where he basically isn't trusting anyone. He's even avoiding Elaine and Avienda, who he really
Hmm.
needs to not avoid. And Min's, if I might not be remembering this perfectly, so you can correct me, um, centrist, if I'm off, because I know you've been reading the chapters recently. But I believe Min's, like, in this sort of part of the book, is deliberately trying to persuade him to go see them. Like, she wants
Yes.
to push him, and he is deliberately going, giving up excuses why he can't. And it's all this Jordan's long game of showing Rand hardening himself and cutting people off. Everyone I've ever trusted has betrayed me. I thought the Aes Sedai were going to help me. They were trying to manipulate me. I thought the Asherman were going to be my people. They tried to kill me. It's basically, I'm bad for everyone. And so, yeah. And we'll realize that in a way, Rand letting people in is what will end up saving the day more than the use of the one power.
Hmm. So we do cut to a Nynaeve POV, and she is in the middle of reluctantly giving some lessons
The
to some of the
Windfinders.
Windfinders. Like, it's all of the Aes Sedai who were supposed to be teaching them basically shirk their duties,
Yeah.
and we see kind of why. Just on how forceful and what you would call, I guess, we see that they disrespect Aes Sedai all the time, and it's not something that some of the more seasoned Aes Sedai are able to handle. So what happens is during this lesson, she I think it was a demonstration that Nynaeve was supposed to do, and then there's this other Windfinder who's pretty meek.
Yeah.
She's not
Talon.
like the other Windfinders. She's very meek, um, very respectful personally to Nynaeve, but she is being told by her superiors among the Windfinders, to do something very specific
Yeah.
to Nynaeve. So what happens is
The
they're
shielding.
doing an exercise where they're each trying to shield each other. So Nynaeve does get shielded in the first match, and she kind of throws that off as a fluke and being unprepared. And then one of the other Windfinders asks them to do it again, and then they go at it again, and again Nynaeve succumbs to Talon's very. I'm not sure if she's more powerful, but she just seems better to
Yeah.
control
Um,
too.
Talon is only an apprentice windfinder, hence her meekness, etc. But,
Hmm.
but she is, according to Wheel of Time Companion, she is just above Nynaeve. But even in the books, Nynaeve suggests in her own head that Talon's like her level and could end
Hmm.
up being stronger when she's developed. So even before we kind of got the Wheel of Time Companion, I think we knew that she was one of the strongest characters we ever see on screen. I believe
Yeah.
that she's the level of a Forsaken.
Yeah, we
She's,
do meet a stronger person in this
yeah.
chapter.
Olivia's not, yeah, but what I'm saying is she's one of the very, very strongest, like on the level of like Masana, for example.
Okay.
Um,
So yeah, she gets shielded again. And then while she's being shielded, she's also being held with wind.
Yeah.
And then the other wind finder, I think it's what's the name of the other wind finder? I don't know the name of the wind finder, but the
You mean the one who's her
superior,
leader? It's Zyda, if you mean the leader.
Zaida. Okay. So Zaida's kind of like forces.
Talan to do it because Zyda isn't strong enough. And like the thing that's really dodgy about this is like they're all taking turns, right? So Nynaeve attacks
Mhm.
her and shields her. Talon shields her, but Talon's going to take the shield off. And like the idea is, I shield you, I let you go. I shield you, I let you go. And then Zyda's like, no, don't let her go. And basically, she wants to see if Nynaeve can break it. But the point is, once you got a shield in place, it's very, very. You don't only have to be stronger than them; you have to be a lot stronger than them to break a
Right.
shield once it's in place. And so
Yeah.
she like Nynaeve feels trapped because in that shield they could have just done anything to her. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So one of the things they tell her, hey, we're gonna flip you upside down if you don't
yeah,
break this shield. So they give her a little time to make the attempts, and she does try
yeah,
to break it, and she's not able to.
yeah,
And she's like pretty upset about this whole ordeal. One, because hey, like she's the one that's supposed to be teaching this class, and it's almost like the other Windfinder has completely taken it over. And
yeah,
then the other thing is that though Zaida doesn't believes that the Aes Sedai are still hiding things from them, so
mhm,
they didn't quite believe that. They thought that Nynaeve was holding something back when she did not break the shield,
yeah,
and she thought that there was that the Aes Sedai knew something about shield breaking that they weren't teaching to these Windfinders, and wanted to make sure that when they held her feet to the fire, that that was the actual truth of the
yeah,
matter.
yep.
I think
I understand that, but I
sufficiently.
hate it.
I think Talon believes that she's telling the truth. Zaida
Absolutely.
still thinks she's like, I'm not too sure about that. But I think once they set her free and everything, like Zaida demands her to be at the next lesson, and of course Nynaeve wants to shirk that duty as much as possible.
Mhm.
Um, and while they're doing that, Olivia pops in the room,
Now
and
there.
she's like, well, first, like she pops in the room, and Nynaeve's like, what the hell are you doing without an escort?
Mm,
But Olivia's just there to be a messenger, and
yep.
that is Brianna wants to have some type of meal or something, and Nynaeve's like, nah, but
Yeah.
Olivia's like, well, it's not really it's more of a demand. So um,
Very few
and
people can
then
demand.
afterwards, yeah, after all that happens, Talon goes up to Nynaeve and she's like, oh, I
Yeah.
always wanted to be a white Sedai. Well, actually, she wouldn't say that. I always wanted to be a novice.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then she starts asking Nynaeve about being a novice. And of course, Nynaeve has never been a novice. So she kind of just she kind of clams up about questions regarding being a novice because she wants to present herself as kind of like a traditionally a traditional Aes Sedai, especially if she's teaching these Windfinders, if they're told like, "Oh, you were never a novice," what's going on here? They would
Yeah.
probably believe that they got sent like the bottom of the barrel to teach their classes here. But even though you don't, if she wasn't a novice, then you're like, there must be something special about her that she never had to do novice training.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well, just
this
just one
is.
thing on that. I think before we move off it, that's important
Mhm,
to look at here. There's an interesting character dynamic here because they're by their word forced to teach the Windfinders, who are being ridiculous about it. They're not showing any respect to the teacher role, as you just saw with Zaida. And
mhm,
then, because all the students aren't on the same level, some of the students are bosses of other students, and even like Zaida is completely in control of Talon. and Talon is way more powerful than Zaida. And both of them are supposed to be being taught by Nynaeve. So the entire dynamic of teaching is out. And one of the things you can see here is how problematic it is for a teacher to teach people who don't respect them. But one of the things that's really interesting is Talon's been a party to this by force, but we can actually see that Talon disapproves of her own people. She like, my life sucks in my own people. Like if I was
because of the nepotism thing,
yeah,
and how she has to do everything so much. Everything is so much more difficult because
because
they
she's
have
so
to
gifted.
prove, yeah, and then they have to prove that she's not in the position she is because of nepotism.
Yeah.
So they make everything much more difficult for her.
But like someone reading the books might think a novice's life is pretty bad. You know, they have to clean pots and get beaten and stuff, and they have to do very mundane stuff. But she's just like, yeah, give me that. I just want a chance to work hard and prove myself and not be judged and just be allowed to like, which is, I just think it's really interesting that like in many people have looked poorly at the Aes Sedai, as in they don't do a good job. But actually, it shows that in Talon's view, they do a much better job than her own people, her own family. And that's
Mm,
interesting to see. And again, it shows that she takes no joy in messing with Nynaeve. She wants
right.
to be good. So I think Talon is genuinely one of the nicest minor characters that we ever meet.
Yeah, I also want to talk about like the difference in the power dynamics because in the Aes Sedai world, it's hey, if you're strong in the power, you're going to be pretty high up here in the hierarchy.
Always. Yeah.
In Windfinders and in the Althon Mir, it's a bit different because
Yeah.
we have Zaida. She's not very powerful, but she's in control of this group, and then we have
Yeah.
some other Windfinders because I think one of them got reassigned or something, and because they got reassigned, they dropped all the way back to like their base level. But they
Yeah.
were it's not like their experience or their power had changed. It's simply because,
Yeah.
oh, I'm not assigned to this captain anymore, so I'm going back to the bottom here. So they have like a very
So
different pecking order than the Aes Sedai do, and it seems like their pecking order is much more variable and it seems like even more hostile
yeah.
than the
And
Aes Sedai's are.
very much based on years of service as well. Like you can't like, even if you're brilliant, they don't really let you accelerate. You
Hmm.
have to do your turns and get your rings and your nose rings. And they also seem very linked. So, for example, the Windfinders, even though they're the people who use the power, they are not anywhere near as important as the ones who run the ships. And
Right.
so the tradesmasters and the mistress of the ships is more important than any windfinder, no matter her power level, which for the Aes Sedai is
Hmm.
just alien. Like, how can someone who doesn't have the power be more important than someone who does have it?
Right.
And it's a
And not
cool.
all wind finders too have the power. So that's another thing. Because I know there
Yeah,
are ships
most
that don't
yes,
have any channelers on there. But it
yeah,
is their job to like foresee weather conditions, but they're not like
yes,
channelers.
and again, one of the things again about this is one of my favorite things about Jordan's Wheel of Time is that he introduced us to the Aes Sedai, and I thought that was the way it was going to be. And then we meet the Aiel, we meet the Athenmir, we get a touch of Shara, and obviously we get the freaking, I can't even say the word, the Empire across the sea. What are they called? Damn it, the Soldan and the down
Sean
the
Chan.
man. The Seanchan, thank you. My goodness, that word just disappeared from my head. And so it's really interesting to see how these different cultures who all came across people using the power, women using the power, all dealt with it slightly differently and or
Right.
very differently, in fact. And I think that's fantastic. And the Windfinders of, well, Shara we get to hear very little about, and then the Athenir is the second least we get to hear about. But it's interesting how in just a few chapters we get a real flavor for how the Athenir do things and how
Hmm.
they view the power. So it's really interesting. and a really good bit of world building.
Yeah, and there it seems like in the world of the Althaion Mir, like contracts are what they deem sacred. So
Yeah.
any yeah, any deviation from the any contract, it seems that's when you're going to rouse their anger.
Yeah, but that's also why Rand can reliably know he's got them, because he made the bargain with them. So
Hmm.
now that he has, because they see contracts as so unbreakable, he knows he's got them.
Right. So to carry on here,
Mhm.
Nynaeve then
Meets Rand.
meets up with. Well, yeah, they get Lan meets with Nynaeve, and they go back to his rooms where the disguised Rand is waiting with Halfor, and Nynaeve's
Mhm.
like, "Who the hell is this person?" And it is mentioned that well, he makes a mention of two figures from the two rivers, Sinbui and Mistress Thane, and she's like, her interest is piqued, and she's like, "Who the hell are you?" And after Harfor leaves, he drops the Mask of Mirrors,
Mm.
uh,
And
and
is this where they talk about the keys?
yeah,
Uh,
so Rand has basically come here to drop off some very important sa'angreal called the Choden Call,
yeah,
which are two keys to some very powerful, like
the
ridiculously
most powerful.
powerful, yeah, sa'angreal. So he just briefly mentions like where they're located, and those ones in Tremalking. He didn't mention the other one near Kyrian, but he already knows where it's at. He's seen it in person.
Yeah, but the Carrion one is the one that he's going to be using. The Tree Malkin
Yeah,
one's the one she's going to be using. Maybe that's why
yeah,
he
the
mentions it.
female one. Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, he's there to drop these off, and he wants a Nynaeve and I guess Lan too to keep him safe since Lan's right there in the meeting, and I'm sure
Mhm.
he's going to try to do that, help out with that as well. But
Yeah.
she sees Rin, and he's looking pretty beat up, so she does a delving, and of course she
She's like,
runs over the spot with the wounds, and she sees that there's two types of evil there that she can't touch. And that she sees that area has a ward of Sidene there, and that I think that's what Flynn put that ward there so that it doesn't
Mm.
go out of hand. It's just kind of quarantined from the rest of his body. So he gives her the keys, and he actually asks Nynaeve and insists that she go with him on this quest.
Yeah, because
So
he wants to kill the people trying to kill him, and he wants to keep everyone
yeah,
safe. But Nynaeve's not up for that. She's like, F that. I'm coming with you. She's not
yeah,
afraid.
he wanted her to just like chill while he takes care of these Ashaman, but yeah,
Mm.
like she's like, no, I'm coming with you.
Dang straight.
So and if she's coming, Land's coming, so Land's coming too. Next chapter is uh, it's a Lily in Winter. This is an interesting chapter. Uh, so we got Elaine POV, and I guess while Rand is doing his talk, Min finds Avienda and Elaine, and they go and they, of course, they're there to talk about Rand. And what they were discussing is talking about the Warder bond.
Yep.
And I know one of the things I think Elaine wanted to learn was how to mask it.
Yes.
So while they're doing that, they go to Nynaeve, and I don't think they know exactly if. I think Min knows that Rand is there, but he didn't tell.
Yeah, Min
the
knows because
other
she
two.
knows that he's in disguise.
Yeah, so they go into that room, and with Lan and Nynaeve, and I think Rand, is he disguised at the moment, or is he in disguise? I think,
No, he was in disguise and then he drops it, right?
yeah. So they're all back together again, and he fills them in about the whole situation with the Ashaman. Basically, hey, only ones you can trust are Nourishmal, Hot, Will, and Finn.
Yep.
And he, I think he got informed. I'm not sure if he got informed. No, he didn't get informed. But we do know at this point is that those three are considered deserters.
Yeah, but yeah, because what happened was at the after the potential assassination attempt, he declares these ones traitors, and the Mahale says that he gives him a direct order to put them up. But then we see the Mahale go back and he has the list, and on the list he's added the names of the loyal ones as well as the deserters, which is one of the first confirmations in black and white that he was in on it.
Right. So, like, I know one of the things that the Aes Sedai have been kind of stressed out about is like all these Soldam in the palace. This is all because of the war that Rand had waged previously against the Shan
Mm-hmm.
and some of these captured Soldam and Damane. He needed something to do with them, so he sent them back to Camelin to be under watch by the Aes Sedai, at least that he trusts, and his cadre of wise women there. So he apologizes for sending all these super powerful channelers there. And Rand, he doesn't want to stay here, basically because he doesn't want to put the people that he loves in danger. He tries to leave immediately, but he's convinced to stay for something that the three girls want to do. And what they ask him to do is they want to be bonded using the water bond. And it's interesting because they use kind of a combination bond and not a
Yeah.
traditional water bond. So, um, like Rand is like, well, I'm already bonded, but they explain that, hey, it's if you could still be bonded to us, it's no problem. So they start doing the weaving. And we got to remember, like, Min doesn't have the power, but they're able to use this new
They use,
bonding technique
yeah,
that they learned, at least
from the
because,
sisterhood ceremony, right?
yeah, because you do not have to be, you don't have to have the one power in order to be bonded in that fashion.
Yeah.
So they end up bonding themselves and Min to Rand. And when everything's said and done, like their first reaction is like empathetic to Rand's pain.
Yeah, they
Like they
feel it.
feel right away that like they could feel the pain of the tattoos on his hands, the pains of the wood, like the wounds in his sides, just kind of
Yeah.
the hardness about him. And they're kind of like on the verge of tears, and they're like, "How could you stand all of this pain?" And by this point, Rand is pretty used to it.
Yeah.
He's It's not something that he thinks about much at
He's
this point
become
in his
numb to
life.
it a little bit. Yeah. Inured.
Yeah. So so yeah, they get bonded, and then they also can feel like the love in the
Yeah,
bond,
absolutely.
and they
They
can feel that
realize
the
that
love is
legit.
genuine. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
genuine love. He loves them all, and they can all feel that that love is genuine for all of
Mhm.
them. So at the end of this chapter,
This is where she's like, yeah.
Elaine corners him, and she's like, "You've done something with Min and Avienda that you haven't given to me yet."
So we're doing
And
it now.
yeah, we're doing that now. And then she asks him to like help her with her dress,
Mhm.
and we get the fade to black thing because
It's Jordan.
there's no. Yeah, there's not going to be any explicit stuff here.
Yeah.
Um,
Is it when they realize that warders can feel emotions through the bond, even if
yeah,
they
this is the
don't?
next part. Is It's
Okay.
pretty comical. So we get a POV switch because we're not. We see the funny thing is we experience the act from another POV through a bond. We know what's going on. Everyone is like, "Oh my God." It's like really funny. I think this is like the genius of Jordan right here. He doesn't even have to show the act or anything. He
No,
just has like what the act does through the bond to people who are not involved in the act itself.
correct.
I think that's pretty genius here. So I found the scene comical.
I
To
love
me, it
it.
was pretty comical because one of the funniest things about this scene is that Brigida's involved and she has nothing to do with this love triangle. And it almost seems as that she has it the worst out of everybody here.
Well, there is a suggestion that if you can't channel, the masking of the bond is very tricky. So you need the person who can channel to do the masking. And so, like, obviously, Rand isn't masking the bond. And
Right.
so, yeah, like, they're just not masking the bond. And so, like, you're thinking, if it was Moraine, she'd have made sure, right? But these guys are just young kids in love. And so, like, so yeah, Brigitte doesn't even realize that like Elaine was going to be that into Rand or whatever. It's like, what? He wasn't even here. What's going on? Why am I feeling these things? This is awful. It's just brilliant.
Yes. And then during this whole thing,
Go get drunk.
Min has, yeah, I know Brigida's wants to get wasted basically. Um, and then Avienda is Brigida definitely wants to stop the act, and she's pretty adamant about trying to do that. But Elaine's like, or Avienda's getting in front of her and say, "Hey, you got to let this happen." And she tries to convince Brigida to drink some Usquai with her. But during this whole situation, Min has a viewing, so she's able to predict that Elaine's going to get pregnant and she's going to have twins. And I think Avienda at this time remarks that she wants to have babies with Rand too.
Hmm.
And she mentioned she wants to have four at the same time, which
But no,
seems
I
pretty
don't think she
crazy.
does. I think she says she wants to have them, but isn't it that Min, because remember, we're in Min's POV, and Min realizes that she's had a viewing that Avienda will have Rand's babies and she will have four at the same time.
Oh, okay. I must have misconstrued that part then.
Yeah, because she, like, I'm pretty sure because it's like it's a viewing we never fully see the result of.
Mm,
But I remember it because it was a weird one because it's basically guaranteeing that she's going to have quadruplets. But but
mm,
but Min says something. I don't have the book in front of me. I don't know. It's been years since I read it. But I remember we used to discuss this a lot because at one point we thought that Robert Jordan would live a lot longer and that maybe we'd see like a
yeah.
series afterwards with the kids. So we used to theorize about the kids a lot. So that she was going to have these twins and Avienda would have these quadruplets. But Min says specifically something like there'd be something odd about them, something weird,
Yeah.
strange. And so some people suggested that it wouldn't be quadruplets, that some of them would be like adopted at the same time, like found
Mm,
in the way that like Rand was found. She'd have some kids, and that there'd be these other kids, and they'd all be, I don't know. But people made all sorts of different suggestions because of this key word that there would be something odd about them. Anyway,
mm.
we never get to find out what that is, so it's irrelevant. But I just thought I'd throw that out because again, a flashback of the old days when we didn't actually know what was going on in the 2000s. Yeah.
All right. So we get quick POV of Elaine. She's waking up. She's kind of in a
Yeah.
blissful mood.
Yeah.
Rand is no longer there. He left her like a little gift of a flower. I think he used some type of stasis a stasis weave on it to keep it from
Hmm.
wilting, um, so that it basically keeps it's not never going to wilt.
Mm.
Uh, and right now, she also finds out that Nynaeve and Lan are gone, as well as Olivia. So,
Yeah.
Olivia's gone. That, yeah, this isn't explained yet, but we know why she's gone.
Yes.
She's strong as hell, and they need strong as hell people for this next task that they're gonna do. But and Nynaeve left a note, and she noted that she took a bunch of like Angreal with them
Yeah.
and Terangreal.
And
But the
that's like,
note only told her what they left behind, not what they took.
and the thing is that like one of the things that is interesting is that like Terran Grail is like Elaine's thing, right?
Right,
So like
right.
taking it's like it's a little bit like we're taking your stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, she took her stuff, like the stuff she likes to study, and it's like
Well,
her
she's
hobby is to study Terangreal
and it's her
and
gift, right?
Angreal.
She's like
Yeah.
way ahead of anyone else in understanding Terran Grail in the modern age. She's not as
Hmm.
powerful as Nynaeve, but her understanding of that is way ahead of Nynaeve's.
Well, so far she's the only one presently that can even make them,
Correct.
and even copying it. And she does that instinctually. She was never taught how to do this.
And so it's pretty cool. And so you can imagine that she'd be narked off, but well, it's naive. She doesn't pay attention to freaking anyone. But I just want to bring out two things here that I think are interesting. One is again the symbolism of Rand being the Fisher King, that the land can bloom with him, even though it's in winter's heart for everybody else. Like, because she like he has this flower, like he shouldn't even be able to have it, but he creates it. And like the whole point of it, if he goes well, the world will do well. If he guts cold and dark, the world will go cold and dark. Like Rand reflecting the world. And then secondly, we talked about how Rand's shutting everybody out. Even his lovers, he's like Min, who he trusts, you think the most, he's cutting even them out. So what he's going to do now, he's basically only taken the people he trusts the top. And interestingly, he seems to trust Nynaeve even more than he trusts the three that he's basically bonded, married to. And well, maybe not trust, but basically he's prepared to risk Nynaeve and he isn't prepared to risk them. But also it shows that Nynaeve's relationship with him over those years when she was the wisdom, he still
Hmm.
values her and trusts her at a level beyond anybody else. And it also shows that Lan, as one of his mentors, has got a level of trust that he will offer to no Aes Sedai. And so he's taken them to something that's so secret, he's not even told, like the women he's basically married to now. It's amazing. It
Mm,
shows that his relationship with Lan and Nynaeve is deeper than we might think.
okay. Right. Right. Um, okay. Next, we can go on to the next chapter here. And let's see. Wonderful news. It's going to be, well, at least the initial is POV is going to be, looks like Cad Swain. So Cad Swain is holding court, what it seems like, in Carrion. And they're kind of haggling and finagling over this deal they made
Yeah,
with
Windfinders.
Othamir. It's like, man, they're always arguing about keeping their promise here. It's like makes me want to pull my hair out. Um, but one of the things, it's just mainly Cad Swain making a bunch of observations about what's going on.
Yeah,
Um, one of the things that she observes is that why are the Reds, some captured Reds, like swearing fealty? You know, the ones that
yeah,
the
that they
the
caught.
wise ones
Yeah.
were like converting into white. I guess we'd call these converted wise ones because they
Well,
went through a wise one apprenticeship and now they're fairly been broken in.
Uh, I don't know if they're wise ones, but they're wise one
Well, they're
apprentice.
not wise ones, but they've gone under wise one training, and
Yeah,
we know how brutal that training is. It's I would call it way more brutal than novice training. Like
yeah.
you remember what kind of pointless stuff that they had to
Oh yeah,
do, and how difficult it was because it wasn't just like channeling and stuff. There was a very, very physical conditioning element to it too. As I know, they had Nynaeve and not Nynaeve, but Egwene and Avienda just like, hey, you guys got to run laps for like half a day, like Jesus. So that's one of the things that's noticed here. Varen is also here. Varen and Sorelia are both
yeah.
here. Um, and they're I think Varen is when I was reading these chapters, it's like, what is Varen up to? She
She,
just seems really shady
couple of
in
things.
these last few times you see her. She's like
Yeah,
using like previously she uses like her own version of compulsion,
correct.
and now she's like, what is she doing?
Well, we find out that the last sisters who needed to be persuaded got persuaded, and you're like, ah.
Yeah.
I wonder if Varen chatted with them just before that happened. And one of the things that Varen says is she says that every woman will find her own reason. And as
Hmm.
we know, some of them find some very interesting reasons for swearing to Rand, but eventually they all do. But one of the things that's interesting is Katsune is thinking about her failures, and
Yes.
one of her failures was to root out the Black Aja. And it's
Right.
just interesting that she's thinking about that while she's looking at the wise ones, while she's looking at Varen. And you're thinking, like symbolism. And she's thinking about how she couldn't quite figure out what Moraine and Swan were up to. And now, of
That
course,
just tells us how skillful Swan and Moraine were at
correct.
being like secretive and spies. Because even at the end of it, when um when Swan got deposed, they still
Yeah.
didn't know the full extent of what was going on. Like they
No,
barely knew anything about what
correct.
was going on. It almost seemed like the like her being deposed was more a thing fueled by the Black and Elida's own ambitions
Correct.
than them actually finding out exactly what they had planned
Agreed.
regarding like the Dragon Reborn. Because
Her deposition was a huge.
if they had known the full extent, like Moraine would have been on the list to like be stilled immediately,
Yeah,
you know. But she was never on that that high priority. It's like, oh, we need to find her and still her right away. But yeah, so I do remember, yeah, yeah, Moraine and um, Swan they were on top of the game. They were like the most
master
uh
spies.
yeah, they were like the master spies. And it's interesting too because their eyes and ears must have been really loyal. Either they were really loyal or they had like a procedure that was so down packed. Because I'm guessing like the way they contact each other, they had procedures they had to go through. And if you don't
Yeah,
know those procedures, then
dead
you're
drops.
not,
Yes,
yeah, you can't be found out. So um, Cadswain's eyes and ears were never able to figure out what Moraine and Swan were doing, basically.
correct.
One of the important things that happens in this little shindig here is one of the sisters that was stilled by Rand, I believe,
Yeah,
gets
when he burst
healed
out.
by Flynn.
Yes,
Um, and it kind of like when they find this out, it seems like there's just like this big heavy thing gets lifted from all of them
agreed.
because it's like, oh, if we can get cured of stilling,
Yeah,
then it like that fear of being stilled. is no longer a fear that's like a death sentence anymore.
Agreed.
So this has a bunch of implications now that Flynn can heal, even though Nynaeve can as well, but
But
um,
the key thing I feel
full
is,
power, full
yeah,
power.
exactly, is that we found that men are better at healing women and women are better at healing men. And
Mm,
again, this is one of those idiosyncrasies that Jordan put into one power, which I really love. And I know that like I don't know, it's extremely dangerous to talk gender in today's society. But like Jordan was very clearly saying that from his in his world, the point of being male and female was very important, and that he portrays that in Randland, the best use of the one power is with the male and female halves combined, and you can't
mm,
trick the power. And so, like even when the male Aes Sedai is born in a female body, reborn by the Dark One, he still uses the male side of the power. So he's still male, just in a female body. It's like it's that crucial, and it's cool to see that yes, you can heal Stilling, but if you use the other one, it's better. And again, it's this sort of point that he was making that in his interpretation, in his world, that basically one is not complete without the other. Neither the man
mm.
without the woman nor the woman without the man, right? To achieve the greatest things. And so, again, really cool symbolic point of like what Flynn can do
Right.
for female channels. But absolutely, it is what Nynaeve did, but just in reverse.
Okay. Okay. So yes, at least they know they can be restored to full
Agreed.
capacity as opposed to Nynaeve restoring to a very like a fraction of what their capacity was if they were to get stealed.
Yeah.
So at the end of this, Alana collapses. Like I completely forget why. Does this have something to do with what they were doing with the water bomb?
Yeah. It's because he had
Okay.
sex.
Oh, that's why she collapses. Okay.
Because remember, she's not ready for it. And so
But she goes
suddenly,
unconscious. She like collapses from it.
yeah, but I think it's because he's been blocking the bond, right? And she's been desperately searching for him, he's been
Oh,
blocking her. And then suddenly he lets it all down because he's basically getting his jollies and she's just not ready for it. And she just like can't cope with what she's feeling. So she just, yeah,
not
collapses.
ready for the jollies.
And but the thing is, I think if it hadn't been such a strained bond this whole time, like she must seriously regret bonding Rand, right? Because since the very moment she did, it's just been bad for her. And now suddenly this reversal is just too much for it. But one thing that's really interesting is they think that like maybe Rand's dead or something. Like they freak out when she goes down because they know it must be something to do with Rand, right?
Yeah, I know. Definitely Varen kind of freaks out at that reaction
Yeah,
for sure. So next little thing that happens, we get a Demon Dread POV, and it looks
love
like it's
him.
a meeting of the Chosen. I guess one of the key things that happens here is they kind of know. It seems like they know what Rand is planning to do.
Mm.
And I thought there was some interesting philosophical things about this particular thing. I don't know if they discuss it, but it was something that made me think about. So one of the things that they mention here, at least the male Forsaken, is the protection that the Dark One offers.
Yeah.
So they know that Rand is trying to cleanse the taint. They also know that the Dark One offers protection to male channelers.
Mm.
So one of the things that gets discussed here is that, hey, if that protection is removed, does that mean your guys' loyalty is going to falter? You
Yeah,
know?
because you
And
won't
that
need
also,
him.
yeah, and that also made me think of like the motivations of the chosen themselves. Like the female channelers never had to rely on that protection. And the male ones do, so there's an incentive to
Mm.
side with the dark. So it makes me think, like, who are the more dedicated? Is it like the female Forsaken because they do not have to rely on that protection?
Mm.
Or is it the male ones who are like, okay, if I get in with the dark one here, I get this protection um, that wouldn't be afforded to me if I didn't ally with him.
Yep.
So it makes you think, it's like, okay, so are the women, are they just more loyal or do they have less ties that bind them to the dark one, yet they're still there? So that's what it kind of made me think about when they had this meeting talking about how Rand was going to try to cleanse this and what they're going to try to do to stop him. I know their plan was like, hey, as soon as he uses this stuff, we're not going to know exactly where he is, and then
Yeah.
we can act at that point. So they don't know his current whereabouts. Almost
No.
nobody does, but they did say that, hey, there's not going to be any way he's going to be able to mask his usage of the Choden Call. So we will be able to find him
But they are
sooner or
worried.
later.
They are worried about him using the Choden Call. Like when he mentions that, you like see them kind of like all flinch a little bit. They're like, "My goodness!" They all know that that's like
Very
bad.
dangerous.
But is this the first time we see Sindane like trotting behind Moradin? Like, is this the first time we see Moradin like in his authority? Like that he is the only one now who's nameless. He gets the true power no one else does. He gets Sindane as his little pet. Um, is or has it already happened? I have a feeling that this is like one of the first times we really see that like she's under his control and that like they suspect, oh, I thought she was Lanfear reborn, but she can't be because she's so much weaker and things like that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we do see him, like, we do see Sindane kind of as his direct subordinate here in this meeting.
Yeah.
And they all know that he is nameless at this point. Because I know throughout
Yeah.
the previous chapters, word was being spread, and usually it was Sindane meeting. Well, these either Mogideon or Sindane meeting with all of the other chosen and saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
Moradin is basically nameless," and then they're like, nobody knew who Moradin was. They're like, "Who is this guy who's all of a sudden nameless?" Um, but they'd also like, if Mogideon is this scared, there must be something to that. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're definitely taken aback about these primitives trying to use a Choden call. People who don't know what they're doing. Like, what are they going to do? But they also see Rand can seemingly do stuff he's never been trained to do. So it's kind
And
of a
they
wild
now
card
know he's
there.
killed and he's beaten some of them, right? Like they can't keep underestimating when he's taken down Ravin and Samael, etc.
Right. So it doesn't seem that Moradin himself is that worried. The other ones are
No.
very worried about
Yeah.
that. They are surprised though about Moradin and um, how quickly and how much saw he's gotten from
Yeah.
using the true power. And they also mentioned that I think one of the first Demon Dread mentioned, like, because we're in his POV, I think he mentioned that he used it like once or twice for great need, but never anything past that.
Yeah.
And it seems that Morden basically exclusively uses that power.
Yes.
Um, and that's frightening to them because they know what it does. They saw the deterioration of Ishamael and what became of him.
Yeah.
So it's almost like them using the male half of the one power, like it eventually drives you mad. It doesn't do it as quickly as using the one power, but it's much more addictive, and um, it seems to be much more powerful. It's addictive, and it's gonna drive you mad, and you're gonna have like a furnace inside your body or whatever it causes. Fire eyeballs.
Not good.
Uh, no, no, not good. Not good to have fire eyeballs. So we can go on to chapter 14, which is what a veil hides.
So
Ah,
we're talking
finally.
Swan.
Yeah, we get to meet one of our major characters here. So we got a point of view from Tuon.
Is this the first ever point of view of hers? I think it is.
Yes, this will
So
be,
who would
I
have
think,
thought that you would introduce one of the main couple people, like who's in like one of the major love interests kind of thing, and one of the major geographical political players, like halfway through book 9. Like, what other series does this? It's just amazing. I love it.
well, yeah, and when she's presented at this point, she is not at her current status that she is by the
Yeah,
end
because
of the
she's got a
book.
veil. Yeah, she has the veil, right? That's
Right.
the whole point of the chapter.
So, the what's going on is the return. So we're starting to see non-military Shanchan arrive
Mm-hmm.
in Abudar. So we're just talking about your run-of-the-mill professions, cooks, you know, the stuff that would come after the invasion. It's like, okay, we conquered everything. Let's bring in our tradesmen and our people.
Mm-hmm.
So this has officially begun in Abu Dhar. Let's see. One thing about the Tuon is that she is super vicious, quite to some degree. She's always looking for omens, and one of the omens she sees here is an albatross flying, which is a victory omen in her eyes. Uh, but anyway, we get kind of an introduction of Tuon as she has a couple. Do you want to talk about, because we didn't really get into like the slave society of the Shanchan, because we did get into Sul'dam
Yeah,
and Damane, and that's definitely an aspect
but it's not
of.
the only aspect.
No, there's other forms of slavery in this society.
Mm. One of the
The
things that's
non. Go ahead.
one of the things I find very interesting about it is that the slavery is very matter of fact. Okay, in this society, like anyone can become a slave in this society. Like I think, like Tuan it mentions, I don't know if it's here or in other bits, but like her own siblings have been made dakoval.
Hmm.
So basically, you can be made property as a punishment. It can just be done to you. Um, and if it is, it's like it just you don't run away or anything like that. It's accepted. That's just now that is your life. But we also see several slaves who have completely accepted their lot and don't seem to necessarily have a problem with it. Not just Damane, but actually most of the Sultan are Dakovala, and
Hmm.
they're just very favored ones. But it makes me think of like slavery in ancient Rome, where a
Hmm.
household slave could actually have quite a lot of authority and be of great use. So we know that one of her main slaves is Seleucia, right? Who
Right.
was given to her at birth, and we know that Seleucia is basically it's like her maid, but she's also her bodyguard. She's like one of her top confidants, and yet she's a slave. And so when we think about slavery in sort of like the 1700s and 1800s, this is a different culture with a very different view of slavery. And depending on how their heads are shaved, that can say all sorts of different things about them, as we see later on with Bale Dolman, right?
Mhm.
And the way they cut his hair, signifying who he is. And so she's currently shaving her head, and she's wearing the veil. So we know she's only pretending to be one of the blood. But basically, the way you choose to lacquer your nails and cut your hair says all these messages about you. Well, it does that for property as well. So I mean, it's very intricate, and Jordan never fully explains it. But what he does give you the feeling of is, I've shown you the tip of the iceberg, and he's implying that there's all this culture underneath that he never fully explains, that you're meant to believe is there because he's shown us this top layer.
Yeah, it does become clear to me that Seleucia does take pride
Yeah,
in what she does.
100%
It's almost like
loyalty.
Tuon is almost a I don't know how you would say it. Like loyalty, yes, that's for sure. But it's like a deep relationship
Yeah.
that she takes pride in taking care of this
Mm.
person, and she almost has a love for her, if you could say that.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so Tuan is wearing the veil because she doesn't want to present herself as anything more than
The blood.
the blood. There's also the thing with, okay, I think what they also mentioned is that those, like the higher in rank you are, the more you have to worry about people trying to assassinate you.
Mm.
So there's also that aspect of it. But we also get to learn that Tuon is a skilled trainer of Damani,
Yeah.
and she has like her own personal Damani that she keeps with her, and she has Suldam as well for those Damani. Um, but yeah, we just learn a little bit about more about her culture, how more about the slavery system from her
Yeah.
point of view, about her superstitiousness when it comes to omens. But and we learned a little bit about the Death Watch guards as well, and
Yeah.
she has
Love the
some
death watch.
Ogier gardeners that are
Yeah.
also guards.
One of the things I love about that is like when she's wearing the veil, like she only gets like a couple of guards, right? But
Hmm.
the like the humans are all like doing it, and the Augier just don't move. So like they're technically like Death Watch guard, but they don't. You can't actually tell them what to do because they're freaking Augier. I love it. I just freaking love that. Just like it's a tiny little thing, but I just love it. Yeah.
Hmm. So I know they talk a little bit about the politics about the Crystal Throne and and all of that type of stuff. I know she's preparing for a meeting with Suroth, which is one of the first Shan-Chan that we actually meet in this series, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yeah. Right back at the beginning.
And yeah, and she's actually we already know she's a dark friend as well.
But Tuon's
So
already suspicious of her, isn't she? Like, and Tuon being suspicious of her gives us, even though we don't know this character yet, this is the first chapter, but the fact that she dislikes Saroth immediately gives us some sort of confidence that maybe she's not an out and out dark friend.
right, right.
Yeah.
So Tuon has her own plans, It's because since she's superstitious, she's also an adherence to prophecies as well, and she wants to make those happen.
Mm.
So one of the things she has in her cards that she needs to do is to make contact with the Dragon Reborn
Hmm.
and try to I guess, subdue him and kneel before the crystal throne.
Mm.
I know there's a plot that's not clear yet regarding a certain Angreal or Terangreal, but we're not there yet. We do get there a little bit. Actually, I don't think. I think yeah, actually, we don't. I'm not sure if we get to Egionin and Baal Domon in this part, but I do know it's in this book for sure. So yeah, it ends with her ambitions about meeting the dragon and making him kneel before the throne.
And
But go
just
ahead.
one more thing is that Tuon takes prophecy really seriously. Like,
Yes.
so she believes in this like we would believe in something that we can actually prove factually. And so one of the things that's useful to remember is that the reason that she's put the veil on is because she beat a demane for giving her a future she didn't like. And we
Hmm.
will later find out what that future telling was. And so
Hmm.
it's one of the cool things that Jordan does. He uses future telling, whether it's via Min, the Elfin, or Damane with the gift, or a foretelling like from Aleda, and he often drops this in, and the misunderstanding of the future is a key plot point, a key plot hook. And so I don't think we ever see a prophecy that is out and out wrong ever. Like they all
Yeah.
kind of come true. And so it's interesting that we can see that she has this absolute faith in prophecies, but she beat this woman for giving her a prophecy she didn't like. So it's interesting dynamic, and it shows that Juan, even though she seems to be fairly nice, she considers beating a slave completely normal, and like, oh, maybe I misstepped. Maybe I'll wear the veil because I just beat this woman. Like, it just shows that like she doesn't see them as people. Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. She is. That is an interesting thing. I didn't think about her steadfastness in believing in these superstitions and prophecies and then getting mad about the prophecy that she was given, not aligning with her own goals.
Correct.
Um, Interesting. Well, let's get to the next chapter here. It's in need of a bell founder. Finally, we get a
Oh,
Matt
Matt.
chapter here. Yeah, Matt's alive. He is
Yay!
alive. Yay! So that wall that had collapsed on him basically didn't kill him, but it did cripple him for a little while. He's definitely recovering from those injuries. But at this point, he has Eludra in his pocket,
Yeah.
and in the beginning part of this chapter, he has a discussion with Eludra, and he's trying to get the secret of fireworks because he's been having these machinations about what he could do with these fireworks. And he's definitely trying to convince her because, she's all about keeping those secrets
Yeah.
because she's an illuminator. But Matt goes and says, hey, your guild has basically been destroyed and you're the last one.
Yeah.
All of the he tells them that the Shanchan went to the illuminator like guild houses, chapter houses, and made them swear to the Shanchan.
Yep.
And I believe none of them did, and they all were either killed or made Dakavel.
Yeah.
So Eludra, upset by this, wants revenge because she knows that Matt is basically anti-Shanchan for the most part, and that he's going to try to do something about that. She agrees. She's like, "Hey, I'll tell you all my secrets, and even the ones that'll make you blush." They flirt with each
If he
other. It
doesn't
goes a
tell
little bit further than flirting
yeah.
as this book goes on, but um, she gives him kind of like a task, and her
Yes.
task is to find. He has
Why
to
do
go
I need
find
a
a
bell
bell
founder?
founder. Yeah,
She said if he can tell her why she needs one, she'll tell him the
yeah,
secret.
right. So I know he goes and searches for some just to try to figure that out.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, he is basically under the thumb of Thailand at the moment.
Yep.
And he wants to get out of under that thumb. And in order to do that, he's trying to place some escape plans in order. But since his injuries are so bad, it's not going to be easy
Yeah.
because he can't run or anything. He's like pretty messed up.
He's not in a
I
good
think
position to ride either.
yeah, because he has a broken leg. I know he broke some ribs too. I've never broken ribs, and I've heard that it's really, really painful.
Yeah.
Uh, so, of course, he's going out and he gets Oliver, who's always
By
like
his side.
chatting up the women with the huge bosoms.
But
Um,
actually, one of the things that's really interesting about Matt is an absolute flirt himself, but he tends to notice other people doing it disapprovingly, which is just
yeah,
so freaking hypocritical. Because he hates Luca. Is that the right name of the guy? The
yeah,
circus guy.
Val and Luca.
And he like he throws shade on him. Like he like does not like the fact that he's this married man flirting, and like he sees it totally in him. But Matt, I'm like, pot kettle black, buddy. You are terrible with that. And
I
it's
know a
just
lot of
it
characters
like
are
one
like
of the things
that.
that Jordan I know, which is great, right? Because Jordan is saying to us, "You're like that too, Tristram. You know, that's exactly your problem. That you see in other people things you don't like, but actually, if you looked a little closer to home, you'd see that actually a lot of things you don't like in other people are things that you don't like in yourself. And it's
Mhm.
cool, it's clever, it's very human, and it makes Matt more likable because he's
Right.
just flawed.
Yeah, so he does catch up with
And
Oliver. One of the things I forgot to
are the
mention
dice in
too.
his
Go ahead.
So are the dice in his head already? Because the dice must start soon because he's going to go and meet
Oh
Squall
yeah,
soon.
at the very end of this chapter is when the dice start rolling.
Okay. I didn't know if they were
Um,
already going.
yeah, they start here in this
Okay.
chapter. And one of the things I forgot to mention is whenever these Taviran think of the other Taviran
The colors.
colors, so he tries to think about Rand and Perrin. I know Rand did this in the earlier chapter when he's trying to find
Yeah.
out about Matt because nobody knows where Matt is.
Yeah. People think he's dead.
Um, they either think he's dead or they just don't know where he is. They don't know his whereabouts or if he's even alive.
Mm,
Um, but that's where we got Rand trying to think about Matt, and we got the colors.
mm,
And then now we have Matt thinking about Rand and Perrin, and he's getting the colors.
mm.
So I'm just trying to think, like, wow, that'd be really strange. You're trying to think about your buddies, and they're just
Like,
getting these
whoa.
weird, yeah, getting these weird swirls of colors in your head. Uh, so Luca is around. I know Luca is like big time now. I think he personally got sponsored by Suroth, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
because the elephant that he was, the person who he had in his circus was a Sean Chan, and he kept him
Yeah,
safe, didn't he, by keeping in the circus. So when the Sean Chan, when the Koren returned, and they're like, "Hey, this is one of the peons on this side of the ocean who actually kept one of our people safe." So he's been given like it's really worked out for him. Like he has
yeah, because
patron.
I know another thing that he's been tasked with is stabling like some animals for the Shan Chan.
Uh,
Like I know they have like a bunch of horses that are stabled with them, like 100 or something like that. But Luca, yeah, he made it up in the world.
mm,
He's riding high right now. Um, And I think we see him, he's consorting with Tom and Beslin, which is Matt's buddy, who is the son of Thailand, the woman that he's porking. He's still incredulous about Beslin's reaction to it as being nonchalant. And Matt is still like kind of embarrassed to even bring that type of stuff up in Beslin's presence.
Because it's his mom.
Right. um, so yeah, here's another scene where he sees someone flirting with people and he gets pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And that's funny. Like, that's
It
Matt.
is.
That's what Matt does. So now that they're all together, they head back to the palace, and that's when the dice start rolling at the end of this chapter. And then we go into another chapter, I think it's also a Matt chapter. But it's an unexpected encounter. I think this was when the dice drop, but oh no, this is not when the dice drop. This is
Yeah,
an
no, it's not
interesting,
till the next.
interesting meeting of another cool character that he meets. So he is walking about through Ebadar with Tom, Beslin, and Oliver, and this is where we get to see like more of the occupation. Um, we see some Death Watch guards, some blood walking around, mixed in with regular citizens. So this is where we get to see um, the non-military side of the Shan Chan immigrants. Um, so one thing that Matt mentions is that um, like Beslin is really kind of hot-headed. So Beslin wants to get rid of the Shan Chan.
Right.
And Matt is like, hey, you got to calm down here. Any little thing, and our heads are going to be on pikes. So he tries to just like, hey, settle down, dude. We'll figure this thing out. Just don't act out right now. Um, I know they talk about Roselle and her bosom and how Oliver always wants to rest his head. And it's funny too, because we get a mention Tom. Tom talks about, oh yeah, I would sing to her and she would let me rest my head on her bosom. So I was like, I wonder if it's just that or more. So it's like Roselle is like the resident like woman with the full bosom there.
Yeah. And she's obviously a flirtatious little minx.
Right, right. So Matt, because he has like this ridiculous clothing, feels that he's way too conspicuous and he feels like he's always being watched. Like his clothes are always set aside for him by Thailand. And
And
there's a
the other
point.
clothes he had disappeared.
Yeah, and they're always like super like flamboyant,
Or tight.
bright colors, that stand out quite a bit. And Matt, we see that Matt spends a lot of time like sneaking through alleyways, and these clothes just don't do him service to what he's trying to do. Because he's at this point he's trying to plan an escape, but it's really hard to do when you're wearing like this super flamboyant clothing.
And the thing is, she's done this totally on purpose, right? She wants to
Right.
make obvious that he's her toy boy and that he can't pretend he isn't. So wherever he goes, it's really obvious and everyone knows where he is. And she obviously hears back and she's fully aware of that.
Yeah. So he does think about, well, we get kind of like an aside of he knows that they met in battle with some Ashaman.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, so Rand is still out there doing his thing. And as he's heading back to the palace, while he's going through alleyways, he gets accosted by the Golem. and he uses his medallion in a very similar way to the previous fight.
Yeah.
It causes the golem burns. He
Yep.
knows that if the golem is able to strike him at all, it's basically going to be a death blow. So
Mm.
as he's tussling with this golem, he hears someone approaching, like yelling something like, "Hey, he's over here! Like I saw him go through here." So the golem receives some orders. He's like, "I cannot be." Um, I
Discovered.
think, yeah, I can't be discovered by the normal populace, so I gotta bounce, basically, something like that. And when the other guy shows up, the golem is still there, and he sees the golem like fitting through a hole through like a brick in the wall.
Yeah.
And the other guy's like shocked. Well, he's not super shocked to see that.
Yeah.
He's like actually not very shocked at all.
Which you should be very shocked. Like,
Yeah, so
yeah.
which is weird because he seems pretty together, and the guy he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw something was going on here," and Matt's like, "Where are your friends?" And he's like, "Oh no, I just used that trick because it works to scare people off." So they introduce each themselves to each other. He mentions, "Oh yeah, I saw that weird thing where that thing went into the wall,"
Yeah.
very kind of nonchalantly. And he introduces himself as Noel.
Yep. Love the
So,
role.
so Noel basically tells Matt, "Oh yeah, I just kind of got kicked out of the inn I was at because some like high level Shan Chan needed a room, and I'm the lowest person on the totem pole, so that meant I was out. And this is the alleyway I usually sleep in." And Matt's like grateful for him saving his hide. Like, "Hey, I got a place you can go. Come along with me, and you can stay with my men." So Noel, cool character. I like
Mm.
Noel. Yeah, Noel is described as like when they talk about his hands in particular, they're like really knobby,
Yeah.
really beat up
Craggy.
looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like he's seen hard times.
Mm.
He's like super tough looking, but he's old.
Yeah. He's worn,
And
right? He's experienced. He's lived it all.
yeah, he's worn out, and we could say by his reaction to the golem that he's probably seen worse or weirder things than a golem like slinking into a hole. So we're in the next chapter now.
Yep.
Pink ribbons. Yeah, I
Oh,
know what this chapter is about.
I do.
So Matt and Noel, they arrive at the palace,
Hmm.
and um, Matt looks like he's been scuffling at least.
Yeah. Well,
It
yeah,
looks like
you
he's been
fought
in a
the
fight.
freaking golem, right?
Yeah, so he wants to avoid anybody that wants to question him about why he looks the way he looks at the moment. As he knows, if Thailand saw him, she'd probably be angry.
Make a big deal.
Yeah, make a big fuss out of it. So they return to the palace, and they see that there's several blood in the palace that have taken residence there. And we do get a little bit of explanation, which seems like Thailand is in the process of becoming the blood.
Yeah.
Is like going through that process.
Yeah. Like, but
Uh,
she'll be like, it's because what Thailand's done is she has basically surrendered the city.
mhm,
But that's actually one of the things that's really interesting here is we very rarely see this in fantasy books that someone who surrenders a city being shown as actually having been wise to do so. Um,
mhm,
and basically, if she'd refused to surrender the city, they would have just blown it up with lightning, right? And taken it
right.
anyway. And so Thailand is not like amazing or a very likable character. but it shows that she is a great leader. And she's even a great enough leader to agree to surrender and to do something that she must find embarrassing and demeaning in order
Mhm.
to save her people. And it's quite clear that one of the reasons she's doing this is not to get ahead in this new world herself, but to preserve her city. And
Right.
obviously, she understands that better than her son, at least at the beginning.
Yeah, she's actually playing politics right now, and she's
Yeah,
doing it to reduce the amount of human suffering in her city.
correct.
I
And
know we see that they actually become pretty prosperous because of that. I know the rule of law becomes something that's more enforced now than ever in her city because the Shanshan really like their orderly society. They're not they don't like crime in the streets, and we do see that there's been crime reduction in the city. I'm not sure if it's in this book, but I know in if not this book or in later books, like a lot of the populace starts to favor the Shanshan occupation. But yeah, at this point, we see. Well, at this point, Matt mentions that it's been about a month and a half since the Shanshan took over,
yeah,
and um, while he's walking through the palace, he goes and he sees a Damane and Soldan practicing, and he takes particular notice to one Damane, and it happens to be Teslin.
yeah,
Teslin was one of the Aes Sedai sent by Elida to Ebadar.
yeah.
I think one of two that she sent to Ebadar.
So he's noticed now that there's captured Aes Sedai here.
Right. So,
You know
while they're
what Matt's
going,
like, rescuing women. That's like his thing.
yeah, he can't stand seeing women in distress, even if they're Aes Sedai. Like that won't stop him from trying to save them. At least we'll see more of that, if not this chapter, in this book. So, so Matt eventually meets up with his people. Um, but before that, um, he's trying to avoid Thailand this whole time. And while he's trying to basically get Noel to where his men stay. And he happens upon Julian. I
Yeah,
think Julian is um,
he's the thief taker.
oh yeah, that's right. Thief Taker is not Catcher, Thief Taker. I know
Um,
there's a distinction here that
no,
he doesn't like. Do you know which one that is?
yeah, thief taker is what he goes by. Thief catcher is the one that is disreputable.
Okay. All
Like,
right.
oh, you're a
So,
thief catcher. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm a thief taker. It's like I'm a cop. I'm not a bounty hunter. You know what kind of thing?
all right. So, Matt wants to go get a change of clothing or something like that, but he's currently residing with Thailand.
Of course he is.
So,
You know where he sleeps.
so he's sneaking around and is like, oh, maybe I can get a change of clothes and stuff before I'm noticed. And when he opens the door, we got Thailand Surath Tuan in the room.
And the dice go boom.
Yeah, so as soon as the dice stop, Matt is expecting some type of calamity to befall. And he's like, what? Nothing's happened, but they stopped. What's going on? We know what's going on.
Well, we do now.
Matt, yeah,
We didn't originally so one of the things that was cool is we didn't know if it was because of Tuon, because of Seleucia, or because of Anath.
Mm-hmm.
because Anath, for example, is pretty important as well. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, there's a lot of important people in that room that he met for the first time, but we're like, it's got to be one of them, right? It's got to be one of them. It's got to be Suroth or Tuon or Seleucia or Anath. Who's it
Mm-hmm.
going to be, and why is it? Is it because they're going to kill Matt? Is it because they're going to help him? And so I remember that whole conversation. And
Yeah, that's funny because immediately, like Tuan has kind of a liking to Matt, and she tries to buy him.
I'll buy your toy, but then
Uh,
she but like Tai Lin has been treating him like property, but she doesn't right now, does she? She very quickly says, "Oh, he's a free man,"
right,
which shows that Tai Lin, even though she's been mistreating Matt, she isn't actually a bad person.
right. So, yeah, so they have their first meeting there. Uh, Matt is a free man, but he's wondering really how free he is.
Yeah, that's the point. Like up to now, he's not been free at all. Like he's trying to leave and he can't. She's controlling him. But now, uh, in the midst of the enemy with these true slavers,
Mm.
she shows that yeah, look, I'm mucking around with you, but I'm not like these people.
I know Tuan sees him in his current state, and she gets upset because she feels like she's been lied to about the safety of the city.
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Oh,
I
I
thought
forgot
this
about
was
that.
this.
I forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, because the city is supposed to be safe, and especially if someone of her stature is going to be there, they expect there to be total law and order. So she asks immediately, like, who set up, asks Matt, hey, who has attacked you? It looks
Mm,
like this man's been set upon, and Matt kind of tries to diffuse the situation by saying that he fell.
mm.
Because I know he doesn't want to get Thailand in trouble. Um,
No,
yeah, he wants to escape Thailand, but he doesn't hate Thailand. I know he mentions that
correct.
he doesn't mind betting her, but it's still kind of a weird situation because she controls the when and the where.
Yeah.
And she
It's
does
just
that by stabbing
yeah.
a dagger into his bedpost, which means,
It's
uh-oh, I got some tasks to perform here.
it's a psychologically and emotionally abusive relationship. But the
Right.
thing is that often in books we see um, that kind of thing, a controlling relationship, a very one-sided one, done from the point of view of a man, and the woman having to take it. And one of the reasons that this obviously has been really interesting is that Jordan's one of the very few who's put a man in this position as the person who's being manipulated and controlled, and he's a main character. So it was really
Hmm.
interesting to see someone try and do this. And to be fair, I remember reading these chapters and they're super uncomfortable for me. And I'm like, oh, like Jordan was clever to do this. He's really like made me think about things in a different way, which is good. Because
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure.
she's not evil, but she is full on manipulative. It is borderline abusive what she's doing.
Yeah, I can see that, but I'm trying to think, how would that work if you switch the gender roles? It's very strange because,
But it happens all the
men are not as apprehensible by, I think they have less of a mind on who they bed than women do. It's just kind of a weird thing that men don't have the consequences that a woman does from the same behavior.
yeah, true.
Um, so it's a little, we could see, even if it doesn't even seem, if you do a gender switch here, it doesn't really apply that much
But
because we do have a unique male perspective on how he navigates this controlling relationship
yeah.
of being like the boy toy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And it is played for laughs, but it is super uncomfortable because it has all those unfortunate implications.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But Jordan totally wanted it to. Like he knew
Right.
fine well what he was doing.
Yeah, yeah. It is a weird relationship. I thought it was interesting,
Yeah, definitely.
but we're like, huh, he never really has anything bad to say about betting her, but everything else is like, ooh, I don't like it. I don't like being controlled. I don't like having to wear pink where this it comes up here. And after Tuon and her coterie and Suroth leaves, he basically tells Tylan why he's in the state he's in, and he talks about that the golem accosted him, and her response is, "Hey, let's go dress him up in pink." uh, and then next chapter, more Matt. The chapter is called "An Offer," and Matt is kind of occupied, well, at least in mind, by the current situation with the golem. Um, and I know this chapter, we do get a lot of him setting up his plans on how to leave Abadar. One of his plans is to get his gold to a safe place. Um, so he uses Satella Anan as well. First, he goes to her and he asks about. I think he asks about the whereabouts of if he knew about. Uh, well, I completely forget exactly what, but I know he tasks her. He's like, "Hey, I need to hide some gold." So he has some of his servant. He talks a couple of his servants, and when I mean servants, these are like the band of the Red Hand servants
Yeah.
that he has.
They're not
They're
really
not they're
servants.
not
They're red
Thailand's.
arms. They're the red
They're red
arms.
arms, but they're basically kind of like Harfor and the other guy, but like the map version of them.
Yeah, they're his crew. And one of the things that's interesting is that at some point, I don't know when it happens, either might have been last chapter, might be this chapter, might be next chapter. But basically, at some point, Matt tells everyone to go, like, go and save yourselves. And they all like
Hmm.
refuse one after another. Like he does it with Noel, he does it with the Red Arms, he does it with Tom. And he's like, go save yourselves. Not we're staying. Like tries to get the Aes Sedai leave. Nope, we're staying. It's like, just people go save yourselves. And Matt's thinking, if
Right.
I could get out and avoid my responsibilities, I totally would. But he can, and everyone else is really loyal to him. Matt's almost confused as to why everyone's so freaking loyal to him. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful frustration.
Yeah. So Matt, I know during this chapter he also thinks about the effect of him thinking about Rand
Mm,
and Perrin and about the strange flashes of colors.
yeah.
And the problem is he has a big problem of avoiding thinking about them.
Hmm.
So it's almost as if he has to go into this meditative state because from what he describes, it sounds like these colors are very distracting, like
Yeah, like fill your
when he thinks
mind.
about them.
Yeah.
So he has to kind of avoid thinking about the colors because I don't know. I almost feel it's like getting hit with a blast of like a psychedelic drug or
Yeah,
something.
like that's exactly what I was thinking, like being high or being on a migraine.
Yeah, so it's not. It's almost like this could be a really inopportune condition. Like if he thinks about them at the wrong time, wrong place in the wrong time,
Agreed.
this can cause him. all sorts of issues. So, when another thing, he wants to escape initially with Luca in a circus, and he wants to make sure to include Eludra into his plans,
Yep.
and he definitely wants to get her secrets.
Right.
So he's also preoccupying himself about the question that she asked in order for him that he has to find out about these bell founders and what they're good for.
Okay.
So he goes to that, yeah, that inn. The Wandering Woman sets up some type of arrangement with her to hide gold and other items. Um, and because he has to hide all this stuff so that he has, a place to kind of, what do you call it? Like the Wandering Woman is going to be his like fallback place to start the
Right.
escape because it's kind of inconspicuous, and at least he has somebody that he could rely on in this place.
Mm.
So he does go around and around the city. He goes around the city to look for a bell founder to see if he can answer this question. He
Still
does.
can't do that.
He does end up finding one,
Yeah.
and he talks to the bell founder about, hey, why would an illuminator need your services? The bell founder doesn't know.
No clue.
Yeah, he's like, huh? What are you talking about? But he's actually been contracted by the Shanshan to create like these big old ceremonial bells that they're going to have some type of victory celebration. So he's busy and he doesn't want to be bothered. Um, and of course, Matt is kind of bothered by that. Matt is not happy about the Shanshan takeover,
No.
and he's bothered by, hey, this guy is like actively siding and doing business with them, and he's happy about it. Um, so Matt goes back to his rooms, and when he gets there, Tuon is in his room, and she's inspecting his Ashendari. The main reason she's inspecting this piece of what she sees as kind of art is because there's some things on this staff that represent has some significance to Shanshan. I know the ravens have
Yes.
some significance to Shanshan.
And to
Um,
Tuon's prophecy dream thing, but we don't fully know
mhm.
that yet, but we will.
Yeah, and they have an interesting conversation about the staff. I know Tuan says, "Hey, I'll pay 10 times the amount of what you paid for it." And
Yeah.
Matt's like, I paid way too much and it wasn't for gold. And
Yeah.
I would never pay that again,
Says that I'm
basically.
not letting you have it.
Yeah. Um, alluding to he almost paid for his life for this thing. So
Yeah, well, he was literally hanging from it, wasn't he? Like a gallows. Oh, it's only because Rand cut him down and brought him back that he's alive today.
yeah, Rand saved his life. And he
Yeah.
has the scars to prove, that's why he's always wearing those scarves, to
And he
cover up that
also
scar
has
across his neck.
what you call it? It has not only the ravens, but there's also an inscription in the old tongue.
Right.
So that may have caught
There's
your
that
eye as
inscription.
well, you
Because
know?
I think the inscription has something to do with thought and memory, which is
Yeah,
a
it
Norse
does.
mythology thing.
Yeah,
So do the ravens,
correct.
which is also a Norse mythology thing. Because the ravens are, I think they're related to Odin.
Yep, correct.
They're like, and he has two ravens named Thought and Memory.
Yeah, and he's the one who only has one eye.
Right.
Again,
So he is like
like the
Odin, the Odin
spear.
of the story.
Yeah, just
Like
like
Odin.
Perrin is the Thor, isn't he?
I'm trying to think. Perrin's not dumb though, and Thor is definitely dumb.
But Perrin is But Thor is a hero. He is
Right.
thought to be dumb. But one of the things about Perrin is that Perrin, some people do think that Perrin is dumb because he's slow to act. So they mistake his caution for stupidity. But
Mm.
actually, he's anything but. But he definitely has more in common with Thor than with any of the others because of
Right.
the hammer motif and the way that he does his challenges and his link with the wolves, of course.
Mm.
But anyway,
So now we get into the next chapter. Three women. So yes, this is Matt again.
yeah,
So
of course it is.
Matt's back at the wandering woman and is wondering why Satella Anand's daughter is being cold towards him. Do they say why? I'm kind of not remembering why.
um,
Because he's always like flirting with everybody. I don't know if that has
well,
anything to
it's
do with
because
it.
now he's quite clearly Thailand's, right? He's wearing Thailand stuff.
Ah, that's right.
He's been branded by another woman, and
The
she's
woman
like,
is too powerful to be messed with, basically.
yeah, absolutely.
Eludra don't care, but everybody else does.
Yeah, well, Ludra's not in the game, though, is she? Like one of the things about Ebu Dar is there's a game in there. Well, not a game, but like a culture thing. They all have these daggers with the little gems in, and like
Yeah,
Ludra's not even in that culture. So, like this
no,
whole idea of
she's from
dueling and all that.
Tanchico. Yeah.
Yeah, she. One of the reasons that Ludra's not affected is because she's not even in the game.
Mm.
Yeah,
So over here at this inn, it's hustling and bustling. There's a lot of Shan Chan, like
yeah.
upper crust, well, at least in the military and officers like that,
Hmm.
there at this place. So while he's there, everyone he goes and he's there to stash some more stuff. And then I don't remember what the exact thing that happens, but he goes into like a back room, and then there's like an Aes Sedai back
Ace Sedai's
there,
hiding there. Yeah,
yeah, crying, I think, or at least scared.
yeah. Because she's in hiding. Like she knows that if the Shanshan find her, that she's going to be made Damane.
Yeah, so she picked this area because it would be less likely to be searched because it's full of like Shan Chan.
Yeah, and also because of Satelanan, right? Satelanan will hide her.
Oh
She's a
yeah,
friend to the Aes Sedai.
yeah. So Tela Anan, friend to the kin and Aes Sedai,
Mm,
couldn't could not just help. Like she couldn't just have. If any Aes Sedai came to her, she would help her. It would be
correct,
like no question about that, because she's very sympathetic to them because of her current or her past with them.
correct.
So she assists this green Aja. She's Jolene. I know Matt has a conversation and thanks her, and he says, "Oh, thank you for placing that note on my pillow," I think.
I don't
And
remember.
she doesn't correct Matt. The note was actually put in his jacket pocket. So this note was to be wary, um, to make sure that Nynaeve was safe because
Mm,
they were after her, and a note was placed in his jacket. So when he said on his pillow, she didn't blink about it, and she was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So he's like, maybe she wasn't the one that did it, but he
yeah,
didn't bring that up. He didn't make a confrontation about it.
no. He let her believe that he was satisfied with that.
Yeah. So during their talking, they hear some banging at the door to this room,
Mhm.
and she gets very scared. And it sounds like it's some Shan Chan of authority demanding entrance.
Yeah,
So Matt, in his quick thinking,
Yeah.
pretends to make out with this Aes Sedai,
Yeah.
and um, funnily enough, the Shanchan that was there demanding entrance was
Is the
Egyanin,
Aegon. Yeah.
and we have previous experience with her
Yeah.
um,
I
from
did. I was really surprised. I did not expect her to come back into the book after book two. Like I'd completely
yeah,
forgotten about her and Bale Dolman. Like they were gone from my mind. And when they rocked
because
back up in this book, I was completely caught by surprise.
I think the last time we see Egyanin is in book 4, where Nynaeve was in Tanchico,
Oh yeah,
and
because they kind of become friends, kind of.
well, she becomes curious about the Aes Sedai,
Mm,
and she discovers that they're not what she thought they were after meeting them. Um, and we get to see that encounter kind of changed Egyanin,
yeah.
for sure. Especially with her relationship with Domon as well, because I know Domon was like this big smuggler and
Yeah.
wealthy smuggler at the time when they met. Because we had Bale and Egyanin. I know Bale assisted with the escape of Nynaeve from the palace. He
Mhm,
ran a bunch of toughs out in the streets to cause some riots and then
mhm.
have them escorted out. And I think Egyanin was just basically curious about the Aes Sedai, and she just wanted to learn about them at that
Yeah.
point in time. Because I know she helped them because they were being accosted in the streets of Tanchico, and they got involved with a brawl. And while Egyanin was helping them fight, she noticed like some of the guys who were attacking them just kind of got blasted back without being touched.
Yeah.
So
So she
she's like,
realizes they're Marath than Damane.
yeah,
But it's tricky because at first she kind of like doesn't get them, like doesn't like betray them, but then later on when they find out that she's Shanshan, they kind of turn on her for good
mhm,
reason, like she's Shanshan, and then obviously they eventually come to kind of an agreement, don't they? Like they realize we both lied to each other. And in the end, they give her the sad bracelets, don't they, to get rid of?
yeah, they give her the sad bracelets to dump in the middle of the ocean.
Hmm.
And those sad bracelets do come back up in this book.
Yeah, well, because we know that she sailed out to get rid of them, the Dominion band, but the other Shanshan border and Saroth has to be shown them. And once Saroth sees them, she's like, oh, yeah, we're not getting rid of those. But that's why she got like raised to the blood because, like, oh, you got these for us. Brilliant. Good job. So she had to
Right.
kind of pretend she'd done it on purpose.
Hmm. So, but Matt doesn't recognize who she is. I'm not sure. Yeah, Matt never met
Matt
Egyanin,
never met her.
but another person is there that
Mhm.
Matt
Has met.
sees that. Yeah, he's like, that guy looks familiar, but he doesn't quite remember who it is. I think I don't know if we can chalk it up to his
Yeah,
memory
the
being
memories,
murky around
right?
that time.
Well, also
Yeah,
his memories got knackered by the dagger.
right. Because the last time he would have encountered them, did he encounter them in Falma? I don't think so.
No, 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 he didn't. No, Bale Dorman. I think the only time he's met Bale Dorman is when him and Rand
Rand were
travel with him
escaped.
back in Eye of the World. So
Okay,
it's
it's been a
been
while.
ages. The only
All right,
people who
so
met
you,
them at Falmouth, the only one who met them in Tanchico was the girls.
yeah, so another reason why he didn't quite remember it was Bail Domon because he has a shaved head,
Yeah,
and his head is shaved in some specific way
half and half.
that, yeah, that denotes him as being a Sojin, which is it is a rank within the Daco Vale, but a
Yeah,
Sojin is the highest within Daco Vale society, if you want to call it that.
correct. Yeah.
We know that Aegyanen, yeah, she got raised up in the world. Um, and as soon as they leave, Jolene is just weepy. She's afraid of being made Damane.
Yeah.
And one of the things I forgot to mention too is that when Matt brought up Teslin to Jolene, Teslin was like, "Oh, I'm glad she got caught and collared." So I was like, that's an odd statement to make to like your fellow Aes Sedai sister. I don't know
Yeah.
if they ever resolve why she says that, but I was like, that's weird.
I don't really
Well, I
remember it.
think I have a theory. Like my only theory would be that
She didn't like her.
she suspects, well, either that or she suspects that she told Egwene or like told Egwene to escape or something like that.
Right.
Because that's kind of what they were there for, to get
To get a Gwen.
Egwene
But
and to
what,
get Nynaeve
what
and Egwene.
one of the things that's interesting here, of course, is that we would expect that like he's basically just kissed this woman against her will, like yeah, as a disguise. But you think if you do that to an Aes Sedai, she's going to kick your trash. But so when they
Hmm.
leave, you expect her to like blow up in his face, and instead she's like thank you for saving me. And you think, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, this woman is broken, like broken.
Hmm.
And then obviously he goes back to the palace, nicks into the Devane quarters, finds Tessie, and the
Yeah.
Devane, and she's like, "Yeah, I won out, but only if you take this one." So now we know that he's not just going to try and take out one Aes Sedai; he's going to try and take out three Aes Sedai, which is just
Yeah.
crazy difficult.
And especially being that one of them is currently collared.
Two of them.
Oh yeah, two of them. So the one with Tessie. So he makes another confirmation. Well, he doesn't even confirm it. He goes to Tessie and says, "Thank you." He realizes that Tessie's the one that left the note,
Yeah.
and Tessie basically explains herself about why she did that. Um, so she mentions that she wants to escape. Matt wants to save them all, but she tells him, no, some of these women are too far past the
Yeah,
point, and if you
they
try to save them, they will rat you out.
yeah, they've gone
Um,
they've started to respond to their pet names
mhm.
and things like that. Like they've gone native.
Right. So as he's leaving, he bumps into Tuon again,
And of
and
course he does.
Tuon's like, "What are you doing down here?" And he explains that, "Oh, I met this Aes Sedai once, and she helped me, and I just wanted to give her like a treat." And Tuon's like, "Well, if you have any," I think she just basically calls anyone that consorts with Damane are sexual deviants. And then he's thinking, how can I ever do that to somebody on a leash?
But that's their point, isn't it? That basically, as
Yeah.
part of their culture, they've made it like wrong to mess with the demonic sexually because they're completely helpless. It's like it's like doing it to a child or to someone who has a mental health deficiency and can't stick up for themselves. Like in their culture, like it's the one thing that they've made them kind of immune to by making it a
Hmm.
cultural taboo. And you can see why.
Yeah. It's almost they treat them like children,
Or like animals,
basically.
like a favorite dog. Like you shouldn't be
Yeah.
trying to like have sex with with my favorite dog. That's wrong.
Yeah. Our property.
Even
Yeah.
though it's like a really pretty dog. It's like, oh,
Right.
come on. Because they
Well,
do
yeah,
often,
that's exactly right because they call where the Damani live kennels.
yeah, and they do treat them like favored pets. Like, yeah, it is a very it is as close to how they are as can be done. But anyway, um,
Well, we could go to the next chapter. We only got a couple more here
yeah,
because we're
let's
going to
push
start to
through.
get into egging on and story a bit. So the next chapter is called Questions of Treason,
Yep.
and we got a point of view from Bethaman. Okay, a little background on this character.
Yeah.
Um,
She's sold out.
Bethaman is a soldam who I think
Who
it was
she
she
held
was collared, right?
she collared she held Egwene's leash. Egwene when she was leashed. But then
Yes,
when Egwene gets out, she collars Bethamin, and Bethamin's the first Sul'dam who realizes that a Sul'dam can be collared. And it's
right,
because Yen finds her collared that she knows her secret, which is why she can control her. Because
right.
if it gets out that the Sul'dam can be collared, then they're technically Aldamani, and that could just break the entire Shan culture as it currently stands.
Yeah, because there would be nobody. It's like it becomes a paradox because if all those who control Damane are colorable themselves, then who controls Damane?
Yeah, because the argument is not we're more powerful than you, therefore we can control you. It is that having the power is too dangerous to let anyone be able to do. Like
Mhm.
that's their culture's response is that having the power is just bad. No one can have it. No one can be trusted with it. And so if the Sul'dam have it, then they can't be trusted with it, and it unravels all their checks and balances. So yeah, it's a big deal.
Okay, so Bethaman is one of the Soldams that is residing in the palace,
Yep.
and she's actually one of Tessie's Soldams. So, Bethaman meets up with Tessie and notices a change in behavior that she doesn't like.
Yeah.
Um, so the change in behavior is right after the meeting with Matt. So she suspects that this Damani wants to escape. So she puts measures in place to make her training harder, to make
Yeah.
her more susceptible to her conditioning and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that meeting kind of accelerated that aspect of things because Tessie was already a difficult Damani, but this is just going to make it harder. So now there's kind of like this ticking clock that's happening here
Mhm.
that they got to get out fast, and if she gets converted too soon, then she can spill her guts about what Matt was trying to do, and this can spell some disaster. So Bethaman makes a shopping trip, and she thinks about what happened to some of her colleagues,
Yep.
Rena and Seta, or some other Soldan that were collared. I think what happened with those two, though, was not the same thing that happened to her, right?
Yeah.
Because I think those two were, I don't know what happened to them.
Um, I think they when they're found and they're
Oh,
released.
Tuon has them. Tuon has them, right?
Yeah, by Alwyn. But they were
Yeah, so,
kept by Lady Saroth because they need to
oh,
keep it
Sirach.
secret. Yeah, because remember,
Oh,
Tuon wasn't
yeah.
there at Falme.
So Sarath is another one who knows about this,
Yeah,
about the collaring of Suldam.
but the thing is that Alwyn is the one who found them, and she was the what's the word? She's a Shojin, like to say Lady Saroth, and so because she's the one who found them, she like can kind of blackmail Saroth, kind of.
Hmm.
And so Saroth raises her to Shojin to buy that silence. And then later on, like it's all like who knows and who doesn't know, because once that secret's out, it's like the genie in the bottle, right? Once it's out,
Right.
it's out.
Yeah. So another thing that Bethaman realizes is that she now has the ability to see weaves
Yeah,
and gauge the strength of a channeler, which is something only the demonic could do before.
yeah,
So if she knew she was ever tested again, she would get collared.
yeah. So, like, her culture is no longer safe for her.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So when she returns to her rooms, she finds a man rifling through her lockbox.
Yes.
The man is a seeker of truth.
Yes.
And he was a seeker of truth that was fairly loyal to Turok the dinosaur hunter. That was a failed attempt at a joke.
I didn't get it. Sorry.
Turok the dinosaur hunter was a video game for the N64. I think there was also a comic book.
Cool.
But Turok was one of the first, I think it was the first Blade Master that Rand defeated, but he was one of the Blood.
Ah, yes.
And he was kind of like the head Shan Chan
In
in
Thalma.
Thalma.
Yeah. With the forerunners.
Yeah, so this particular Secret of the Truth
Yeah.
is doing so because he had a particular fondness for Turok
Okay.
and he wants to get to the bottom of what happened. He has his suspicions, which are not accurate, but he has them anyway.
Mm.
Um, so he comes to Bethaman and he tells her he doesn't know about the collaring thing. The only thing he
Yeah.
knows is that he has an association. Bethaman has an association with Guinan, who has an association with Suroth. So he suspects that Suroth somehow orchestrated
The
the
missing.
death or murder of Turok.
Right.
And he wants to use Bethaman as a pawn to find out what Aegyanin's doing, which
And
he
the missing
believes. Oh, go ahead.
and the missing Damani, right? Because even though he doesn't know the secret, he
Mhm.
knows there's some Damani missing and some Suldams missing.
Well, one
So
of the things he points out about Aegyanin is that he knows that she was specifically tasked to round up missing Soldam, and
right.
he knows out of all the people who were tasked to do that, she was the only one that brought none back. And he also knows that some of the ones that she did find, she reported that she had killed them, which may have been, at this point, just him trying to appease him and trying to mark that these. Well, what I'm saying is that these Damane or Soldam are probably just still alive somewhere, but
Yeah.
she said that she had killed them to keep them off their trail.
Mm.
So what he tells Bethaman is that, hey, you need to reacquaint yourself. I know you had a friendship with a Guiana, and you need to you need to go and become friends with her again. Of course, this creates an issue with Bethaman because of the rise stature of Guiana, and it's not going to be so easy because she would not be able to make that overture to somebody with Guianan stature.
Right.
But the Seeker's like, I don't care. You got to do this anyway. And so, understandably, she's freaking out because she knows if any of them were put to the question by the Seeker,
They're
that
cracked.
they'd crack, and then the secret of the colored Soldam would come out.
Yeah. Which will then ruin the whole like culture.
Yeah, so he basically tasked her to spy on her, and she has to report back at regular intervals. So next chapter, we get Gyanen's POV. It's a matter of property. Interesting chapter. So she's residing at that wandering woman.
Of course. The
Uh,
only safe place.
yeah. So At this point, she knows that the Seeker has some suspicions about her activities,
Mm.
but her Sojin and I guess lover,
Yeah. They'll let him.
Baal, is they're kind of mulling over about how they regret not disposing of the sad bracelets.
Agreed.
Well, at least Baal is expressing that, but she's like, we had to do it. We had to give it to them. It was the only thing that saved our bacon.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
If we didn't do that, you'd be dead, or I'd be dead or made Daco Val, and you definitely would be dead. So one of the things they talk about is possible manumission for him. But if
Mhm.
she was going to make him a free man, she would have to provide him with the means to be able to support himself. And he says he would only do so if she gave him a ship. And she was like, well, I don't want you smuggling anymore. This would get us in lots of trouble. But they kind of come to an agreement that the reason she wants to free them is because they want to get married. But she cannot get married to a Sojin. That's just she can't do it.
Yeah.
So eventually, Bethaman knocks on the door, and she explains about the Seeker that's on their trail, and they kind of threaten each other with don't do. They threaten each other. So she threatens. Well, Bethaman here is really scared. She's basically shaking in their boots while they're talking here, and Bethaman tells her, "You better not say anything,
Yep.
else I'll spill my guts."
Right.
Aegeon basically says the same thing back to her, so they're both kind of in hot water. Um, if either of them like talks to the Seeker,
Hmm.
she basically instructs Bethaman, "Hey, just report on like normal stuff that you see. I don't expect you to try to evade this guy." But Bethaman makes a suggestion. Hey, what about you make this guy have an accident? But again, and it's like, no, that's not in the cards here. That's like too suspicious. Um, so after they settle that issue, immediately again, and starts drafting the manumission papers, um, which would grant Baal his freedom, but Baal refuses because the reason she's doing this is because she wants him to
Yeah.
leave the city for his own safety. And he's like, no, I'm going to be by your side no matter what happens. And Baal
Everyone.
says, okay, what's that?
They're all refusing to leave. Everyone's refusing to leave. I'm
Right.
not going to go without you. I'm not going to go without you. So Matt's like, okay, I'll just take everyone with me. It's like, fine.
But Baal's like, well, if you leave with me and we can gather a crew, that would be the best option. So he makes some suggestions to Aegon. It's like, hey, I noticed this boy in the inn. His name is Matt Cawthon, and I met him because he was fleeing some Trollocs and Murdral. And she's like, Trollocs and Murdral, you're coming up with fantasy stuff here. There's no such thing. So she doesn't believe him. She's like, you got to show me one of these Trollocs and Murdral one day because you're full of crap. Of course, he's not. But so yeah, she mentions Matt. It's like any guy that can survive an encounter with Trollocs and Murdral will be a great crew member. And he mentions Tom, and she had met Tom before in Tanchico. So she knows about Tom and how crafty of a human and resourceful that he is. So they start to hatch their plans there, and immediately Bale leaves to go to try to find Matt. All right, and then we're in the last chapter that we're going to discuss today. It is called Out of Thin Air. So this is the point of view of Rand.
Mm.
It's an interesting one. So Rand is on the trail of some rogue Ashaman, and this has led him to the city of Farmatting, which has some interesting properties. So
Yeah.
Farmatting, this is the city that Cadswain is from, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is Elida also from Farmatting, or is she from somewhere else?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Well, anyway, Farmatting is kind of like an island city, similar to Tarvalin.
Mm.
Um, and he's on the trail of Roshade, which is one of Time's puppets, Mazrim Time's puppets, and he's been on his trail in the city. Um, and he's following him discreetly. In this city, no men or women can channel. All swords are peace bonded and tied together with wire so you can't draw your sword.
Yeah.
So it's a very a strict city when it comes to the rule of law. Um, so the reason why he was able to get the Ashaman here in this city is he's been leaving fake clues around that will point whoever was on his trail to the city. So he's using that advantage to trap who's trailing him and turning the books against those who are following him. So eventually, like Rochade is not really hiding his. He's very flamboyant, so he's not hiding his presence in the city.
No.
he's so he's just kind of walking around, not even, you know, not wearing a cloak over his head or nothing. He's very flamboyant, but eventually, what we do find out is Roche goes down an alley, but the encounter doesn't go how Rand had planned it. Roche was doing that on purpose because he knew he was being watched and
Mm.
followed. And the reason he did that is because um, Roche's sword was not, well, it was peace bonded, but he got away around that.
Yeah, he
So
uses the
he,
power to cut it so finely that you can't see the cuts.
right. And this was before they entered the city. So they get into a duel. Despite that, the Shade tries to attack him, but Rand is using his training and he defeats Roche with his bare hand. Like, what the hell? How does he do that? Well, the reason he's able to do that is because he trained with the IEL, and they kick all kinds of ass with their bare hands.
We saw the cold open with his mom.
Yeah, so he basically punches Rochade in the throat, which
Yeah.
causes Rochade to choke to death. But Rochade isn't the only one there. Another one of the rogue Ashaman, Kissman, was observing, and he hops down from the where he was observing and tries to get at Rand. Um, Roche thought he had, I'm sorry, Kissman thought he had him in his sights,
Yeah.
but it seemed that luck was on Rand's side and he just happened to dodge at the right moment because he felt weak. And
Yeah.
his body got weak and he's just like, ugh, and then he kind of fell and rolled away from where the attack would have happened had he not felt that weakness.
Yeah. And like the key thing as well here is that like he's come here because like this is the only way he can fight, bring people out that have the power, but like
Hmm.
they'll actually have to like face him. They can't just kill him without him even being aware of them. And
Right.
we did see back in the early days of the Black Tower that he would train against five guys with a sword and like try and take
Hmm.
on five at once. So he never let his use of the power overwhelm him to the extent that he refused to do physical training. And so we do know it has been established for many books that Rand is a sword master in truth now, like
Hmm.
not just like that he holds the sword. And so like that's what makes this possible.
Not only is he a sword master now, but he's pretty adept in hand-to-hand combat,
Yeah,
unarmed.
yeah, because of the Aiel's training.
So the luck of the draw when Rand dodged, he dodged out of the way, and Kissman, instead of stabbing Rand, stabs Rochet right in the chest
Bad choice.
and finishes him off. But the fight is not able to continue because they've alerted the guards.
Mm,
Kissman tells Rand, if they catch us, what would happen. So they kind of agree to walk away.
mm.
Um, so they go their separate ways. Uh, Rand is pretty sure that if he made his presence known, that the government of formatting wouldn't do anything about it because he's the dragon. They think they would respect his title,
Yeah, but
but they also think that if they got a hold of him, they would give him to the White Tower
agreed.
because formatting has accepted Elida's terms.
Yeah,
Uh, and interesting enough, we go into Kissman's POV. Kissman is really pissed off about Roche because he was supposed to wait until all the other Ashaman arrived before attacking or
yeah,
trying to kill the Dragon Reborn. And this is where we get some more information about um, Taim's like motivations and plans. So here we have explicit confirmation that Time ordered these
the
Ashaman to
attacking
kill
Terran.
Rand.
Yeah,
Yeah, they ordered him to kill Rand. So we have the explicit confirmation of this now.
yeah,
We also have explicit confirmation, at least, that Kissman has met with some of the Forsaken, and that some of the orders about killing Rand have come down from Demon Dread.
yeah. Well, like because one of the things that this shows is that the Forsaken are not all on the same page. We already knew that, I guess. But
Hmm.
we see here that the Mahil's going, yeah, kill him in Karheim. And when that doesn't work, he's furious with him. He's like, right, look, go to Farmadi, and this is your last chance. But then Dashiva's disappeared, and Demandred, specifically by name, it says he's saying, you kill Rand, but don't tell the Mahil. It's like,
Hmm.
my heels ordered me to come to formatting. It's like, what? And Moradin tells them kill Rand as a last resort, but bring his stuff. It's like, they're just, so basically it shows that these Ashaman are actually being in contact with multiple Forsaken.
Right,
It's
right.
crazy. How can they possibly win? These poor Borns. But like they're bad guys, but I'm sorry for them.
Yeah, they're bad guys, but oh, and all the bad guys have competing self-interests.
But isn't he murdered? Like isn't
Oh, what
Rand?
happens to Kiss Man is that he gets like a nick in his arm that's bleeding, and he's like, "Oh, I can't show blood around here because they'll think I'm up to no good." So he goes running off, and then his arm starts turning black, as if he was stabbed by the dagger, the Shatter Logoth dagger. And
Ah,
he's thinking, it's like, oh, if I could run out of the city, I can get this healed because we can't use the power in here. And he's not able to make it out of the city. He basically succumbs to the dagger wound and dies. Well, I don't know if he dies. They don't say he dies, but we gotta. That's basically what happens. Like people get stabbed by that thing, die in like less than a minute. Um. So after that, where we get a POV from Rand, he goes back to some inn that they're staying at. Alan and Nynaeve and Olivia and Min are at the room.
yeah,
So he lets them know, hey, we need to get out of here. We're packing light. And he starts planning on how to deal with the other Ashaman that are coming. And he says that he doesn't know that Kissman is dead.
yeah.
So he's thinking that Kissman is going to report on them and they need to stay mobile because he wants to leave because his plan, while he was able to kill one of them, the plan was to kill all of them, and he has to kind of regroup and figure this out. Um, One of the things that's interesting though is he starts to draw pictures of the Ashaman so that everybody knows what they look like, so that if they see them, to be wary. And he draws like exact likenesses of all of these Ashamen that are still alive that are in pursuit. One of the things that Rand notes mentally is that he has little to no ability to draw, and this ability must be some type of inheritance from Luz Theron. Quick little chapter after that. Slayer. Slayer gets tasked by somebody. Well, he kind of reminisces about killing the two Black sisters, so we get confirmation that he's the one who killed the Black sisters in the Stone of Tyr, um, that were being held for interrogation. So we get that confirmation, and he also was tasked with another assassination, which we don't know who they are, but he kills two people. He says that he's doing this on the behest of what his employer, which seems to be one of the chosen. Well, Slayer believes it's one of the chosen, so it's not explicit if they are or aren't at this point, because he knows that the chosen are the only ones who are able to find them easily
Mm-hmm.
in Teleran Road, so he assumes that one of the chosen is the one tasking him with these. Um, so he gets some more instructions, and he agrees to fulfill this task. And as he leaves to do this, he kind of thinks about how he enjoys killing wolves more than people. And then he turns into his counterpart in Teleran Riod with his Esam and continues his hunt. Because he is a split nest, the split in him. And when he's in the real world, he's Luke, and when he's in Dream World, he's Esam, right? So that's how that chapter ends. What do you want to say about this block of the book that we just finished right now talking about?
One of the things that's interesting for me is it shows what Slayer can do, right?
Yeah, it gives a little bit more about his
Like,
abilities. It seems he can just show up anywhere he wants,
yeah,
kind of like traveling, but his is a
exactly.
little bit more hard to trace.
Because one of the things we realize is that basically he's using Telar and Leon, so he's not actually
Yeah.
using channeling. But what this is a clue is that actually all traveling uses Telar and Riyadh. And that's
Mm,
why it can break the rules of sort of space and time because it uses the soft magic system within the hard magic system, which is obviously very
Mm.
clever. And so that's how he gets around the challenges that normally a teleportation magic would cause.
Yeah, he
Uh,
doesn't have the limitations that someone that needs a gateway
no,
has. Because the limitations for a gateway user would be the
size,
familiarity of the place they need to go to,
yeah.
or the place that they're at. That's not an obstacle for someone who's skilled in Teleramriod. Um, I don't think of what else. Like the physical, like he just comes in. There's no announcing of his coming. Like whenever someone uses a gateway, there's a gateway.
He
Like you
just
obviously see
appears.
this thing. Yeah, he just pops in and out. There's
And
no gateway component.
isn't the chapter called like Out of Thin Air or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, that's what it's called. It's called Out of Thin Air.
Yeah.
So he basically has a more direct way of traveling than a traveler or someone who uses gateways does.
I wonder, I do wonder if Slayer, like Padan Fane, if Slayer would have had a slightly different conclusion if Jordan had been around to write it.
Hmm.
Because I think that there was just not quite enough of his true backstory and, like, his role with, being related and all that jazz. And I just think, like, some people mentioned that Padan Fane didn't have like for them, a satisfying conclusion. I felt that little bit of that way about Slayer. I've mentioned before that Perrin is my favorite character, and Slayer's like
Mhm.
set up to be his big rival. And I thought that, like, with things like this, I'd have loved to have seen more of this, establishing more what Slayer could and couldn't do, and then for their finale to be able to demonstrate more of those dreamlike abilities and the true power of those abilities.
Well, I know, like from what I heard Brandon Sanderson saying, that
Mm-hmm.
he completely like expanded the role that Slayer and Perrin had at the end of the series.
Yeah,
Um, and as
I like.
far as like
I don't think
them and
Jordan
their
left hardly
abilities,
anything on Slayer.
yeah, yeah, I know that a lot of what he wrote for Perrin and Slayer was kind of off script, like it wasn't
Yeah.
like
It
notes
hadn't been prepared.
specifically. Yeah, so a lot of that part of the story is part mostly a construction of Sanderson. I know, and I understand what you're saying, like to learn more, but like man, that system in Tellerang is so soft. It's like wow, it seems like they're super powered humans, especially like near the end where they're having like these Super Saiyan-esque fights in Tellerang with each other. I was like, man, this is like I'm watching an anime here. And this is before I realized, like, as I know the book, I didn't know about Jordan's passing. As I started late on these books, I think I actually started like in 2010. That's when I started this series. And I didn't know about the passing. I didn't know about the like Sanderson. Um, like his role. I did remember seeing his name on the book, but also saw Jordan's on the books. I didn't know that Sanderson was basically writing them. I thought it was like, oh, he has this other writer helping him out now. So I noticed there was a weird tone shift in some of the later books, but I didn't put two and two together at the time. Um, but yeah, that soft system I know they do some weird stuff with like dream shards later on, and they
They
try to
do.
make. I know Sanderson tries to make the system a little bit harder towards the end when we're dealing about the mechanics, like with dream shards, and you have all this other stuff to contend with. But yeah, they were like two Super Saiyans battling it out, basically, in the last books.
Yeah, well, because like his point is that in a dream you can do anything, right?
Right.
That's the thing, and so the limiters are off. And one of the things as well is that like the world of dreams was not governed by how strong you were in the power. It
Hmm.
was governed by how good your mind,
Quickly, how quickly you could think.
yeah, your thinking and your determination. Like, could you make yourself envisage things the way you wanted to envisage them, or did you let the dream carry you? And so
Hmm.
that's a crucial difference. And so the thing about Perrin is that Perrin's mind is basically like a vice, and he's got very good control of himself. And that
Hmm.
control is what actually allows him to eventually become the master of Telar and Riyadh, even beyond what Egwene achieves.
Right. Right.
You know, when he
Yeah.
starts messing with balefire and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a weave.
it's just a weave. Anyway,
uh, yeah. I can't wait till we get back more into Perrin. I know this is. I like to call this Matt's reintroduction back into the story because he wasn't in the last book at all. He was still trapped under that rubble. That whole last book, and it's nice to see Matt's return
yeah,
back into the story
for
and
sure.
what he's up to.
And
Well, I was like, yeah, Matt's back. It's a little bit of refreshing. At least we're getting POVs now from all three, at least.
yeah, agreed. And we're beginning to also sort of like the boys are changing now, aren't they? They're all like getting towards their romantic cycles are all like fully engaged now, and like Perrin's like almost completed. Well, he's basically completed his, and that's why the kidnapping is important to keep his going. Rand is now bonded to all three of his, so it's like it's all coming to an end. And then finally, we've met Tuan, so it's like all of them are coming now to their end games.
Yeah, whenever I think of the characters, this is kind of around the time that I feel like the characters are really hitting their stride
Mm,
and they're much when I think about the development of the characters and just like, oh, what's peak Matt? What's peak Baron? What's peak
it's here.
Rand? Yeah, this is around that era where they're like in their peak. So like you have Matt. I know he's not like doing a lot of battling or anything, but we got the dice rolling. We got
Yeah.
his relationship with the Band of the Red Hand. We have
Fighting the
his
golem,
starting that fight in the Golem. You know his big nemesis. Well, one of his big nemesis,
yeah,
and then you know him and Tuon getting to know each other.
which is
You
awesome.
know, right. And then on Perrin's side, we have okay, he's now gotten past that he is a leader now, and he's accepted that role. He is, you know, he's fully engaged with what he's been tasked with, and that's with helping Rand and subdue Masema. Because this Masema thing is, I remember it being a pretty big
It
part of
was.
his story. The kidnapping is a very big part of his story. He goes through some really big um, moral situations, you know, throughout this part of the story. Um, and then you have Rand, who's becoming hard. He's finally coming to realize that there are three women who love him, um, and
His level of
it,
power is getting off the scale as well.
right, and he's about to complete the task of cleansing the taint. Um, you know that part of the story. Nynaeve, we're at her peak too. You know, she's fully engaged. You know, she's now married with the love of her life. She's an Aes Sedai. She's in a somewhat of a leadership position now. She's going to
Mm.
go off and help Rand cleanse that taint. You
Yeah.
know, I know there's not been much, so there hasn't been much Egwene here in this book. So there's not much of us tracking the Salador Aes Sedai. I know that they're about to approach uh, Arvalin. They're pretty much over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, she got a lot of attention the last book though. So
She did. And she's going to get a lot of
a little
attention
bit,
next
yeah,
to,
towards the end. Towards the end, she gets some pretty big attention in this book. Um,
but also the next two, like Egwene gets a lot because of what happens with the.
yeah, that interesting thing that
Anyway,
happens.
we'll get to that when we get there.
Yeah, yeah, that's like peak Egwene. Like I think
It
when
is.
that happens, that's peak Egwene. So Egwene
Agreed.
hasn't peaked yet. She's going to peak in the
Soon.
next couple books, but that's like her moment.
I agree.
Not the end is pretty impactful, but yeah, when she becomes like completely badass, that's like in the next couple books. That's when she becomes unquestionably badass.
Well, I think Egwene, Elaine, Galad, and Gowan all kind of are yet to truly find their. And
Yeah, it
that,
takes a while for Gawain at least. I know
yeah,
he's
yeah,
pretty controversial.
it's because he has to go along with Egwene, right? It's only
Right,
when she rises that he can rise with her.
right.
And I think Galad has to wait for Perrin to do his thing to truly
Yeah,
be Galad.
that's true. That's true.
But anyway,
I think they're very dependent on that. But yeah, yeah, I'm it's at this point, it's like, okay. The weird thing is there are a few books which are really hazy to me. I know one of those is one of the ones we did, book what was it, seven? Because there are like key moments I remember from seven, but I remember overall it's like, man, this one is a little slow. I know if the book ever gets, or I'm saying the show ever gets there, I know they're going to focus a lot on the actual war, which they didn't focus too much. So we'll be seeing a little bit different perspective if the show gets to that point in the story.
are you suggesting that the show will do things differently from the books?
Well,
Heresy.
yeah, of course. I'm guessing that we're going to see the on-screen battle between Couladin and Matt. I don't think the
Well, for
show is going
sure.
to like show. It's like, oh, that happened off screen. The show is not going to do that.
No way.
Yeah, and I hope the show includes that. Like, that's a pretty epic
It
thing that
will.
happened.
It will.
Um, I can't wait until the show reaches the Isle Waste. I'm really interested in how they're going to treat that. But overall, so far, I'm really enjoying what I'm reading in this book. I don't
I love
consider
it
this
as
book
well.
at all a slog. Is this book
No,
considered part of it?
it is. This and Crossroads of Twilight are both considered in the slog, but I love Witness Heart. It is one of my favorite books, and mainly because of the finale. But I love this book, and well, just wait till we get to the finale, guys. You will.
Yeah, this didn't seem sloggy to me at all. Like I was very much like into what was going on.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
totally invested in the finale of this book and the build up to it, and this whole like now that we know what he's going to try and do, it's just like man, that's crazy, and and the fact that again, one of the things I love about the series is the length of it, like the fact
mm,
that we've had the taint for 9 books of like 900 to 1,000 pages each, like the taint is
mhm,
just part of how we see male channelers, and the idea that it could be removed is just so crazy and then
right.
he's like, I'm prepared to go there. It's like, wow, it's like a huge
Yeah.
advance.
And the crazy weird thing too is just thinking about him removing that. It's
Yeah,
like of the current channelers that are male and out there, it almost seems like many of them are not on his side right now.
yeah.
So that's a really dangerous and risky move on his part, but it's something that has to be done, like regardless. You know, you can't
If they are
keep
to
having
win,
these men going crazy, and you're gonna have to restore this balance in the power.
I wonder if it had been done when Asmodee was still alive, if the removal of the need for the Dark One's protection would have allowed him to flip sides fully.
I think he was one of the. I think his sole reason, well, not sole, but a big factor of his reason for flipping sides was the protection.
Yeah.
Because without that and being able to live, you know,
Forever to
forever,
be able to
basically.
become perfect at music.
Yeah, he wasn't really concerned about the aims of the Dark One himself. He was kind of just doing what he had to do in order to stay alive and protected, And
Mm.
that's what I was thinking about when they were talking about
Yeah.
Rand cleansing, possibly going to cleanse the taint, on how that had more of a effect on whether male channelers would pledge allegiance. And that also makes me think about the Black Tower as well.
Yep.
And they
Absolutely.
know the what would happen, or if they know the eventuality of their power. So it does seem like them flipping over seems very practical in order to survive. They were able to survive the madness and be protected if they flip over. I think that was a huge factor in Mahale turning so many Ashaman to the black.
Yeah.
And we know a lot of them went over voluntarily. There were only a few that they really had to
Mess with their heads.
convert,
Yeah.
yeah, using the methods that they use. We knew some held out for a very long time. Logain held out for a very long time. Um, but yeah, we knew them. It sounds like the majority went to the dark without having to be coerced too much.
Yeah. Without
Ah,
they were able to coerce them without completely superseding their free will.
right, right, right. So like, hey, you guys can survive. Because I know at that point there were some of them. Well, we know how harsh the Ashraman training is, so
Yeah.
they saw male channelers start to go mad pretty quickly.
And be killed for that. You
Right.
put something in the tea, right? It was a known thing. If you go insane, they kill you. And so it is a full on life and death situation here. So yeah,
Yeah, there were only the very few, that were extremely loyal to Rand that didn't want to go
correct.
that path. So yeah, these it's interesting how complex these things are, how subtly complex they are. And I like that Jordan doesn't go on huge what do you call those, exposition dumps and trying to explain those things. He leaves them subtle enough so that the reader can kind of think about
And interpret.
it. Yeah, and try to interpret what's going on and making us feel smarter, for having to jump through those hoops to figure out the intricacies of what's going on here. I think that's why so much like Wheel of Time stuff is um, why there's so much like creator content out there,
Yeah.
especially for people who do like a lot of theories and stuff. Because you
Mm.
get something that's very expositional, cut and dry, with less things to speculate about. It's not as entertaining. It's not as fun. I think that's like the hallmark of many of the successful, at least TV shows and books, have had these little subtle hints that there's a lot more to what's going on that we can be seen. I know a big one that I often talk about is the Lost series.
Mm.
They were very vague even up until the end on what was going on in that show. And you had every week. I remember the popularity. You'd have talk shows talking about that show every week, trying to speculate what was going on. And I kind of feel like there's a little bit of that in Robert Jordan's work. Like he drops all these hints that you got to put together, and he's not being super explicit about some of the things, and some of the things he never resolved. And
He didn't.
we
And that's why he had like, he coined the phrase RAFO, didn't he? Read and find out.
didn't find out. Yeah, Raffo.
Yeah.
Like when he was pushed on these things while he was still alive, he wouldn't give any answers.
Very rarely
He,
would he, very rarely.
yeah, only if it was super obvious,
Well,
something that we should
and
have
so,
obviously gotten.
and sometimes he would tell people things about the past, but not about the future. Like he would say, "Oh, like in the Age of Legends, could they do this?" He'd be like, "Yeah, they did this." Or like if they asked something cultural, like how can you tell if a woman's married in Abu Dhar and what do the different colored gems mean? Things like that. But if you ask him about the future of the story, he would always refuse.
Oh
Always.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's Robert Jordan for you.
Anyway,
All
what
right,
was
so
your
yeah,
what was
go
your
ahead.
highlight so far of Winter's
So
Heart?
far, my highlight was it's gonna be weird, but it's the scene where Elaine and Rand are getting it on, and they have to like figure out what the hell to do with what
All
they're
the water.
experiencing through that bond. It was so funny. I was like, I don't know if he was trying to be funny, but it was funny.
I think he was fully embracing the awkward because he realizes that a lot of people don't think like relationships as they're portrayed in books and TV and film are often portrayed in this incredibly beautifully slick romantic way that most of
Mhm,
our relationships just aren't. Even the ones that are going well are clunky at times and
mhm.
awkward, especially in romance stuff. And like if people remember like when they first had like sex as a virgin, like it isn't super slick, you know,
Right.
Hollywood-esque stuff. And I think Jordan just fully embraced that. And he's like, this is what teenagers are like when they're goofing around trying to figure out how to get the other sex to be interested. And
Yeah, and I really hope that they portray this moment on the show because it's gonna be so funny if they do it right.
I hope so
Like
too.
I'm imagining like Brigida just like dropping to her knees. And then later you see Alana like passing out. Ah, I can't wait. That's gonna be so funny. But yeah, that was my highlight because I was like, okay, this is a funny scene,
Yeah,
but the way in which he subverted showing
the sex.
sex was even more genius.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, he really did a stroke of genius here. And not only was it a really interesting point of view of what was going on, it was funny. So
Yeah.
I was like really impressed by that.
And it taught us something about border water bonds as well. So
Right. So
both
it
the
taught
lore
us
people,
about the mechanics of the magic.
but in a
Uh,
funny and something important to the plot because like Elaine totally does need to have sex with Rand. That like has to happen. And so he got
right,
lots of things in all at once. He did humor, he did something that was relatable, he advanced the romance plot, he helped bring an end to the will they won't they have the three women in Rand, but he also threw in a little bit of lore at the same time, a little bit of mechanics.
right. So I was like, oh man, this is funny. This is great. Ah. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was super funny. If I can think of any other scene that we talked about, just like Matt, just like
Yeah,
Matt coming back and seeing
Nat's
him back in the
reintroduction.
story. Yeah,
And like the thing is, we've just noticed that Matt now has now met Noel and Oliver and Tom and Tuan, And these are crucial people to Matt's storyline. And like a couple of them, like he just met, like he meets Noel and he meets Tuon in these chapters we've just read. That is when they arrive. And like, sometimes it can be hard to realize like the impact that Noel has on the plot, but he helps save him from the golem by causing the distraction that makes the golem flee. And then later on, we'll see him be very important in future books. So it's cool.
Right. Yeah, we'll get to find out his true identity.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah, those are the things I really enjoyed about these chapters. Because I have vague memories of reading this. Like I don't know the super exact details. The weird thing is I have like much more memories of like the earlier books than I do of the later books and of these particular books here. And I don't know if it's because of the whole slog nature of some of these books. Like I remember key points, but I remember less specifics in these books. So it's a joy rereading them because I was like, oh yeah, this stuff is happening, and I completely forgot about that. But yeah, when I reread like the earlier books, I was like, yeah, I remember all this. Like none of this is a surprise to me.
Openings and endings are by their very nature memorable. It's one of the reasons that when people talk about writing books, like your opening is really important. You have to hook people. And if you've ever given a talk or a discourse or written an essay, you'll often find that what people remember is how you introduced it and what your conclusions were. And they'll only vaguely remember a couple of the highlights from the main part, even though that was the vast majority of the time. I speak quite frequently. I do public speaking, and almost always what people remember is how I opened rather than what I actually said in the 20 minutes when I was actually speaking.
You put less importance in that 20 minutes.
I believe that the importance is in the meat, but what people remember is the witty opening. That's just the nature of memory.
Right. Yeah, that's why a lot of people like to open with funny or interesting anecdotes, and then they get into the meat of stuff.
Correct.
And they might tag around to that anecdote again, and then add like the meat that was discussed.
Correct. Anyway, it's
all right. So yeah, we can go ahead and wrap this up here. I know you don't have any plugs, just that you like to come on our podcast, me and Andrews, and talk about really nerdy fantasy stuff.
Read the Wheel of Time.
Since Andrew's not here, I'm not certain when he wanted to do the next chat.
I don't know if you wanted soon.
Yeah, I know he expressed that he wanted to talk about the Lord of the Rings trailer. So I guess we'll just have to message him about that and see when we're going to do it. It could be possible next week or 2 weeks from now. I'm not exactly sure. As far as the Wheel of Time goes, well, as soon as I finish reading again, I'll be able to set up another date. But this one's coming along a bit quicker than the other one, so it shouldn't be too long. But did you have any last words there, Tristram?
Just read the Wheel of Time and wait for the finale. You think this was good? The last bit of Winter's Heart is one of the best finales of any of his books. Maybe only beaten by A Memory of Light or A Lord of Chaos. It's an amazing finale.
Yeah, I was about to ask you about A Lord of Chaos.
Lord of Chaos is good, but I think this one is my favorite. I mean, The Memory of Light and Lord of Chaos are ace, but I just love this finale. Oh, so good. Anyway, but yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for checking us out tonight. Please like and subscribe and continue to listen to our live streams and podcasts. And I'll see you guys next week. And I don't know what we're doing next week yet, but we're doing something. And if I can keep you posted, I'll set up an alert and it'll show you basically the title of what we're going to do next week, whatever it might be. All right, so you guys take it easy and you have a great night.
Ciao.
And I'll see you soon.